This young man is Sano Haruto, a hunter with a job class nicknamed Mana Gopher. As you can see, he's currently in a party, clearing a dungeon. But the problem is, even though he's a hunter, Haruto acts as a support, with his only ability being to buff others with mana. Today, after defeating the Golem King in a low-level dungeon with his teammates, Haruto was so exhausted he collapsed onto the ground, panting heavily. But before he could even catch his breath, another man from the party approached him. In a very annoyed tone, he said, "Hunter Sano, you didn't contribute much to today's raid, did you? So why haven't you gotten up to help? Go dismantle the materials and clear the path." Yes, sir," Haruto stammered, scrambling to his feet. The other hunters watched him. Some were puzzled, others looked on with contempt. They started talking about him. They didn't even bother to lower their voices. Isn't he supposed to be the type with a critical attack skill? So why does he only stand in the back and provide support? Pfft, he doesn't have many skills, but didn't you know? He actually has an endless supply of mana. He can create infinite mana? The other guy shot up in surprise, exclaiming, "Wow, in that case, isn't that pretty much the strongest skill ever?" Strong? How? Mages can just absorb mana from healers. We only need a huge amount of mana like today when we're fighting bosses. Other than that, he's useless, the man continued, his voice dripping with unconcealed disdain. No wonder he's been raiding dungeons for 5 years, and still hasn't reached level 30. Haruto heard every word of their conversation. It'd be a lie to say he wasn't angry, but honestly, he was used to being talked about. Behind his back like this. Still, no matter how low-level a hunter is, their abilities far surpass those of ordinary people. In that sense, Haruto was already stronger than most of humanity, and he also possessed an incredibly resilient will. So, no matter what others gossiped about, Haruto swore to himself that he would never give up. Everyone always assumed his skill was just creating mana and transferring it to his teammates. But in reality, his ability was much more special, and Haruto had never revealed it to anyone. He possessed a unique skill called copy and paste, just like now. After picking up a rice ball, a virtual window appeared in front of Haruto with the message, "Do you want to copy the target?" along with the shortcut Ctrl+C. After pressing the shortcut, another rice ball fell out of thin air, just like magic. This was his special ability, Ctrl+C and Ctrl+Phi, which allowed him to copy and duplicate targets. It was an ability he had never heard of before, so after discovering he had this skill, Haruto had very high hopes when he awakened as a hunter. However, he quickly realized this ability was completely useless. Because it was a skill that only he was allowed to possess, any duplicated items would disappear like an illusion the moment they left his hands. Therefore, he couldn't copy money, nor could he sell any equipment he copied. On top of that, sadly, copying equipment was also restricted by level. For example, since he was at level 29, it was impossible for him to copy an item from a level 90 hunter. Haruto's ability to create infinite mana, in other words, his Mana Gopher nickname, was actually just him infinitely copying the small amount of mana he possessed. Copied mana didn't disappear, and it could be transferred to other hunters. Haruto had also tried to use this method to copy skills, but it required all sorts of ridiculous conditions, like needing to finish off a high-level monster, for example. They were all conditions that were nearly impossible for him to meet. Haruto felt completely drained. If he could just gain a few more levels and copy some decent equipment, he could join any hunt he wanted. But Haruto just couldn't seem to reach the level 30 mark. While furiously devouring his rice ball to vent his frustration, Haruto scrolled through the news on his phone and saw a trending story with the headline, "The Longsword Calicia has arrived in Japan." Haruto's eyes immediately lit up. The longsword was a weapon that possessed 2 special skills and had a defense-enhancing effect. The reason this longsword was such a unique item was because it had its own level. The moment this sword was used, the wielder's level would instantly jump to 200. On top of that, it was highly sought after because anyone who reached level 30 could use it. Even though he hadn't reached level 30 yet, the moment Haruto saw the longsword, he started dreaming about the future. If he could copy that sword and become a high-level hunter, at level 230, hunting high-level monsters would be a piece of cake. Haruto immediately made that weapon his top priority. According to the article, the longsword would be exhibited in Japan for the next week, but its durability was only at 10. So even if he managed to copy it, it could only be used for a few more hunts. Because of that, it was no longer suitable as a weapon. So the decision was made to exhibit it around the world to make money. For Haruto, this was a golden opportunity. If he could just touch that sword even just once, its durability wouldn't be an issue. He could copy it and use it forever. Now the most important problem was gaining enough experience to reach level 30. And so, Haruto continued to hunt. After being kicked out of the Great Sage Guild, he joined an unlicensed dungeon hunter organization to buff them with mana. Today, the group was hunting in the giant king spider's lair. Haruto continued to do his job well, transferring infinite mana to the other hunters so they could go all out and fight the boss. During this process, Haruto was reunited with a cute junior named Ikanaga Aoi. Although on the surface, Aoi would often poke fun at his level, Haruto knew that deep down he was a good person. The two had known each other since their time at the Great Sage Guild, and Aoi had also joined this hunter organization that specialized in clearing unregistered dungeons. He was a real money-grubbing demon. Although unregistered dungeons are dangerous because they haven't been reported to the Hunters Guild, that's why Haruto had this chance to team up with high-level hunters. He and Aoi had barely exchanged a few words before they had to get back to work. The dungeon boss, the King Spider, was right in front of them. It even had its own name, Alisa, a level 80 monster. The moment he saw it, Haruto felt like he was in deep trouble. He had a feeling that if it twitched one of its legs, he'd be toast. Haruto couldn't help but gulp nervously. Seeing this, Aoi took the opportunity to tease him a little. "Senior, you're just a spectator. You don't have to fight. What's there to be scared of?" At this point, Aoi's tone shifted to a serious one as he warned him. "This monster is actually pretty easy to fight. But you still need to be careful because once you get caught in these spider webs, all your movements will be sealed." Aoi also reminded him to be careful with the eggs in the nest because if they provoked its children, the spider would become even more ferocious. A king spider that enters a berserk state is far more terrifying than other types of monsters. Just then, Ikanaga, a mage in the group who was as ugly on the inside as he was on the outside, suddenly shrieked. "Why are you wasting your time explaining so much to a tourist like him? What are you, a tour guide or something? We don't have enough time. Stop doing useless things." Aoi gave a strained laugh and apologized to the guy, while Haruto was visibly furious but couldn't do anything about it. The mage was still fuming, muttering and cursing Haruto as useless while he walked, and it was this exact attitude that landed the party in a critical situation. Because he wasn't looking where he was going, the mage accidentally kicked a stone. This stone just so happened to hit the spider web, waking the king spider, waking up to see so many visitors. It immediately greeted them with what could only be described as a fatal blow. The hunters with defensive abilities on the front line fought back with all their might. They had originally planned a surprise attack while the king spider was still asleep, but now they had no choice but to face the music. Their team had already assigned roles beforehand, so after the initial shock, everyone quickly calmed down and returned to their positions. Perfect teamwork. It made taking down the monster go quickly. Haruto, hiding and observing from the side, was extremely pleased. He felt that if everything went smoothly after this monster was defeated, he could leech enough experience to reach level 35, no joke. Pushed into a corner, the king spider suddenly retreated. The tank at the front quickly realized its intention to shoot webs. He yelled for everyone to get behind the pillars to dodge the attack. That mage, he wanted to use this chance to atone for his mistake, so he stepped up to show off his skills. His ability was fire magic, which was perfect for burning the spider webs. However, his opponent was a level 80 king spider, not some pushover spiderling. His fireball was actually stopped by the web. His pride wouldn't allow this to happen, so he continued to charge up, preparing to unleash an even more powerful attack. "Wait!" Haruto sensed something was wrong and shouted a warning. "You idiot, what if you break its eggs?" The team's tank also realized the problem, but it was all too late. The fireball spell had already left the mage's staff. The spider was still standing there, but its fragile eggs had all been shattered by the magic. The situation quickly spiraled out of control. At this rate, the spider would soon go berserk. They couldn't fight back anymore, and the first one to pay the price was that very mage. He was hit by a spider web. "Senior, quick, hide behind the pillars!" Aoi shouted anxiously to Haruto as he ran. "Once that thing goes into a berserk state, it'll start shooting webs everywhere." The mage was bound tightly by the webs, unable to control his staff or cast any more magic. Seeing the king spider getting closer and closer, he panicked, one moment begging it to spare him, the next moment shouting at it to get lost. But obviously none of it worked, because right after that, a massive scream was heard in the spider's den, estimated to be over 160 decibels. Then Haruto, who couldn't run away in time, also took a hit. He was wrapped so tightly by the web that he couldn't breathe. Haruto cursed under his breath. He had always stuck to low-level dungeons to ensure his safety. He never thought he'd face this much danger just because he wanted to level up once. In the blink of an eye, the spider was on top of him. As its leg came down, Haruto immediately felt a flesh-tearing pain. It was a completely fatal blow, but with the power of only a level 29 hunter, he was somehow still alive and kicking. This could be explained by his skill, which wasn't entirely a drawback. Because even though the items he copied and duplicated could disappear, he himself would never vanish. So, right before entering the dungeon, Haruto had copied himself. It's just like in a video game. Every time he dies, his next body gets pasted in, and the old corpse disappears. Haruto watched with his own eyes as his old body was torn to shreds by the spider webs. No matter how many times he had seen it, he still couldn't get used to it. But in the current situation, besides that trick, he had no other way to stay alive. He continued to struggle against the monster, and myself as well. The goal was to distract it. But the king spider's strength was on a completely different level. Haruto had already copied and pasted several times, costing him multiple lives, yet he still couldn't weaken it. But suddenly, at that moment, he heard a familiar trembling voice cry out, "Help me!" It was Aoi. He was still alive. Haruto didn't even want to blink and look, but it was really him. He didn't even know what he himself should do, but then he saw the spider lunging for Aoi. If he just abandoned him now, he wouldn't be worthy of being called his junior. With that thought, Haruto was instantly pumped up as if injected with adrenaline. He grabbed his dagger, charged forward, and slashed right at the king spider's leg. And then, while struggling against the opponent's attacks, Haruto suddenly received a notification. "You have leveled up." He didn't understand why, since he hadn't even completed the dungeon, but now the matter of sending that spider monster to the afterlife was only a matter of time. Because if he could deal a little bit of damage each time, copying and pasting a few hundred more times would be enough to accumulate the damage needed, enough to finally kill it. But a matter of time was right, because it took Haruto a whole 3 days to finally defeat that king spider. After dying and reviving over 50 times, copying and pasting with all the weapons he brought, plus the ones from his teammates here, but thanks to this battle, Haruto's fighting skills had become much more proficient. The opponent, on the other hand, had no way to heal or recover, so in the end it was defeated. After taking down the boss, Haruto leveled up like crazy and received another reward. However, he didn't have time to care what it was, because getting Aoi out of there was more important. But after carrying him just a few steps, Haruto was knocked down by a swarm of baby spiders. Looking at the horde of aggressive level 30 mini-monsters before him, he was truly speechless. First the mother, now the children. He himself would be fine, thanks to his infinite resurrection from copy-paste. But if Aoi took a hit, he'd be finished. So, in the heat of the moment, Haruto held Aoi tight. Using his own body to shield him from the attacks, he shut his eyes tight, ready for the flesh-tearing pain that was about to come. But just then, a master appeared and took care of the spider swarm. Although he couldn't see how the person fought, Haruto knew they were a master because the skill they used was Hellfire. It was a fire attribute skill, the highest level fire magic. The number of mage-type hunters who could use this skill could be counted on one hand, and if Haruto remembered correctly, in Japan, there was only one person known as the Witch's Spear, a magic swordsman with a spear, the one who was also ranked 5th among Japan's hunters, Nanas. "Are you two the only ones left alive?" Nanas asked. "Yeah, just our bad luck," Haruto replied as he helped Aoi up. Then she carefully observed the dungeon's condition. The baby spiders had hatched, proving the egg sac had broken earlier, and the king spider had entered a berserk state. The high-rank hunters in the group had all died, yet a low-rank hunter like Haruto was still alive and even had time to save Aoi. To clarify what happened in that unregistered dungeon, Nanas took Haruto to the Japanese Hunter Association for questioning. After asking about everything under the sun, he was finally released. But the item dropped by the king spider was to be confiscated, to be reported to the higher-ups. Haruto was stunned. The entire high-rank hunter team was wiped out, and on top of that, they had participated in an illegal dungeon raid, including him, who had paid extra money just to tag along. Yet Nanas was letting him go so easily? "What more do you want?" she replied coldly. The association overlooks low-rank hunters using their prize money to join raids with high-rank hunters, especially for the purpose of leveling up. It's only natural for hunters to want to get stronger. And although this can lead to some bad consequences, it's still effective in developing a hunter's abilities. Before Haruto left, Nanas also informed him that the item dropped by the king spider he defeated would be converted to cash and transferred to his account in a few days. But he coldly refused, and requested they transfer it directly to Aoi's account. Haruto's nonchalant attitude made Nanas very suspicious, as it was a large sum of money that hardly any hunter could refuse, especially a low-rank hunter like Haruto, who needed resources to get stronger. She felt he was definitely hiding something, but as for what he was hiding, Nanas couldn't figure it out just yet. After leaving the interrogation room, Haruto revealed a cunning smile. How could he not covet the item dropped by a boss monster? It's just that before Nanas confiscated it, he had already copied and pasted it into countless duplicates, and stored them in his inventory. To understand this, we have to go back a few hours, to when Haruto had just successfully defeated that monster. The item he received was the giant king spider's adhesive. According to the system's description, this thing had powerful adhesive properties, just like the giant king spider's silk. Haruto couldn't help but feel disappointed. What the hell was the difference between this lump and a tube of superglue? He couldn't believe he'd risked his life over and over just to get this useless item. While he couldn't find a use for it yet, Haruto took the opportunity to create copies first. After the process was complete, he took out the original giant king spider's adhesive to examine it one more time. But this time, it suddenly vanished right in the palm of his hand. Haruto stared in amazement, and then a system notification immediately popped up to answer his questions. Giant king spider's adhesive has been merged with an existing skill. Control 5 has been upgraded. Model. This notification was even more astonishing because it was the first time Haruto had ever heard that his pasting skill could be evolved. He'd always thought its uses were pretty limited. Who knew it could be upgraded? It seems the item that dropped from the Spider King was compatible with the Kanshin 5 skill. In that case, if I find an item compatible with the Kanshin C skill, it can be upgraded too. After evolving, Haruto's pasting skill unlocked 3 new skill options. First, he could copy a target and then paste it for a duration of his choosing. Second, he could paste a target anywhere for a fixed period. The final option was that he would not be stuck by the giant Spider King's webs. Haruto had thought those other options were all useless. Turns out they're pretty useful after all. He immediately tested the first option. Now the duplicated object wouldn't disappear even after leaving Haruto's hand. This was his biggest breakthrough yet. A whole minute had passed and that spider fang was still there. Haruto couldn't hide his excitement. He could create as many copies as possible. They wouldn't disappear after 30 minutes, 100 years, or even 1,000 years. After testing his new ability, Haruto grew even more thrilled. He felt like his life had turned a new page. From now on, he would become filthy rich, a hunter living at the top of society. He had also leveled up, so now all he needed to do was copy and duplicate the longsword, Kalisha, and he'd be set. 2 hours earlier, on the Rainbow Bridge in Tokyo, an escort vehicle was cruising down the road. The driver was Morgan, a level 112 hunter, and a member of the International Hunters Association. The other person was Ares Hill, a level 113 mage, also a member of this International Hunters Association. Ares, how many times have you been to Japan? Twice. You said Japan was your mother's homeland, right? What does her homeland have to do with me? Although Morgan seemed talkative, Ares' replies were always curt. This time, the longsword had come to Japan to complete its international exhibition tour. Ares had joined the escort team to take the opportunity to find a few things in the dungeons here. As the two were talking, their vehicle began to pass over the Rainbow Bridge dungeon. It was Morgan's first time seeing a dungeon right over the sea, and he couldn't help but lean over to look. How romantic, he praised admiringly. What nonsense are you talking about? If that thing collapses, it'll be a disaster. You're so boring. I haven't done anything to you. Why are you always so grumpy with me? At the same time, at the Access Management Office of the Rainbow Bridge dungeon, the gatekeeper was Shinoda Satoru, a level 21 attack-type hunter and a member of the Great Sage Guild. Satoru was yawning non-stop, complaining about how boring this dungeon management job was. Seeing this, his colleague beside him reminded him, "Hey, you little punk, take your job seriously. You only got in here because of your connections, you know?" Just then, something landed on Satoru's foot. It was a slime. At first glance, it looked cute, but his colleague's face immediately paled the moment he saw it, because a slime casually wandering outside the dungeon was definitely not a good sign. And what he feared came to pass very quickly, because right after that, as something latched firmly onto his back. When they turned around, they discovered it was an incredibly ferocious orc. Even though he raised both his sword and shield to block, the air was soon filled with the stench of fresh blood. Those were the chaotic events that happened 2 hours ago. Meanwhile, in the present, our protagonist Haruto was still chilling, completely unaware of what had happened. It seemed he was very satisfied after beating that Spider King and raking in a good amount of skill points. He was just a little bit away from reaching level 50. Hunters who surpass level 50 find it easier to join dungeon raid parties because, aside from low-level dungeons for beginners, the mid-tier monsters inside are all above level 50. However, in mid-level dungeons, hunters can harvest more experience points and rewards. Over time, a few rare items might also drop. That's why hunters from level 50 onwards level up quite easily. Haruto was still basking in this unexpected happiness. Moreover, he was also considering whether he should go auction off the adhesive from the giant Spider King. After all, he had copied quite a lot last time, and they no longer vanished as easily as before. Then, suddenly, the sound of thundering footsteps echoed. Haruto turned his head. He saw a group of people hurriedly, running towards him from the opposite direction. "Make way!" They hastily pushed him aside. "What rotten luck! Why did the dungeon suddenly collapse?" Haruto only managed to overhear a few bits of information. It seemed the Rainbow Bridge dungeon had collapsed, and the monsters had escaped from inside. The vehicle carrying the legendary sword to the exhibition hall had also been caught up in the chaos. The last piece of information seemed to be the most important one. The thing Haruto was targeting, the long sword Kalisha, was under threat. Because of this, the International Hunters Association had issued a formal request for cooperation. Some hunters had quickly gathered on the rooftop of a building. Their top priority from the Japan Hunters Association was to protect the vehicle transporting that longsword. It was Nanas who gave that directive. In addition, because the situation occurred so suddenly, they also had the mission of protecting the civilians. While Nanas and her teammates were preparing to board the airship, they were distracted by a young man who was desperately trying to rush forward despite being held back. And that person was none other than Haruto. "Hunter Nanas, please let me go with you. I saw you deploying your plan." Nanas looked surprised to see a low-level hunter like Haruto here. but he had no choice. His target was that longsword, after all. Since Nana still found many things about Haruto puzzling, she finally agreed to let him come along, even though she knew full well that his actions were 100% driven by his own motives. The other hunters on the airship all had grim expressions, because it hadn't even been 3 weeks since they'd stabilized the Rainbow Dungeon, and now it was collapsing. Only Nana's expression remained unchanged. She continuously ordered her subordinates to do everything in their power to contain the aftermath. They had to prevent a disaster like the one from 15 years ago. Haruto knew all too well about that great catastrophe, a shocking event that had occurred simultaneously all over the world. A dungeon break on a scale comparable to a natural disaster. The world was plunged into fire and smoke after an all-out monster assault. The casualties were countless. Even now, everyone shuddered to recall it. The root cause was that when the monsters in a dungeon aren't cleared out regularly, they gradually grow stronger. The dungeon becomes saturated, and eventually it collapses. At that point, the horde of monsters escapes and slaughters innocent people, creating a living hell on Earth. They call these events dungeon breaks. It was during the catastrophe 15 years ago that Haruto lost both his parents. He'd never told anyone this, because he himself could hardly believe it. But during that event, he had seen a supernatural being from another dimension. It was that very being that had cursed him, with this copy-and-paste ability. The creature had called this curse a gift, and it had said only one thing: 25. He didn't know if it was referring to the skill's time limit or his own life expectancy. Even now, the grains of sand in the cursed hourglass continued to fall. Back then, the creature appeared because of the great disaster, which meant that the next time it appeared, history would repeat itself with another catastrophe. From now until the deadline it gave Haruto, there were only 5 years left. But now, he knew how to level up his skills. He could absolutely become the strongest hunter and find a way to stop that disaster, and at the same time remove this curse from his life. But to accomplish all those lofty goals, first, Haruto needed to successfully duplicate the longsword Kalisha. At that moment, everything on the Rainbow Bridge was in chaos. Monsters had begun attacking people, causing a chain of traffic accidents. The screams and the sounds of crashing cars intensified the panic. Satoru, as a dungeon management employee, also had to take up his sword and fight. However, their side was undermanned and quickly lost ground to the monster horde. Even he, a level 21 hunter, was being constantly threatened by goblins. Luckily, his burly colleague was always by his side and had saved Satoru several times. Even though the man was as crude as the sword in his hand and always contemptuously called Satoru a pretty boy, he was the one who'd just saved him from the orcs and that last goblin. "I'll definitely repay you, senior," Satoru thought to himself. The other man was getting anxious because there was no way a few dungeon management employees like them could stop this onslaught. Besides, all communications were being blocked by the dungeon's electronic waves, so they couldn't hope for much backup. He just guessed that more than a few people must have noticed something was wrong and were on their way, but they needed to cross the bridge to reach any support team sooner. Satoru looked at the now desolate bridge with some hesitation. "Do we really have to go that way?" "We have to! Better to move!" "Then stay here and serve ourselves up to the monsters." The two of them started running for their lives, sprinting across the perilous bridge. Meanwhile, at the vehicle carrying the precious longsword, a level 190 Bear King was relentlessly attacking. As a physical-type beast, its size far surpassed the other monsters. The vehicle was under constant assault but was just barely holding on, because Ares was using her defensive magic. Moreover, her defensive magic was top tier. Even a level 400 monster would have a hard time putting a scratch on it. But then in the next moment, as something far more terrifying than the Bear King appeared, something that Ares believed even the highest-level defensive magic would be useless against. On the airship, before they had even reached the Rainbow Bridge, Nanis's subordinates had already spotted it. Even someone as calm as her broke out in a cold sweat upon seeing that creature. Because it was Quasia, the most powerful monster boss of the Rainbow Dungeon. "Everyone get ready!" Nanis shouted in horror. Just then, Quasia suddenly opened its mouth and unleashed a terrifying blast of power. The shockwave it, when created, could be said to have shaken all of Tokyo. Haruto was scared stiff seeing this. That monster blew away the entire bridge just by breathing. At this rate, he had no idea if his beloved longsword was still safe. With the dungeon boss's appearance, Nanas had to immediately order a change in their battle plan. "All association members will take control of this area." After everyone had disembarked from the airship, she remembered Haruto's existence. He had vanished without a trace. But Nanas wasn't too concerned. Someone at level 29 who survived an encounter with the Spider King, this probably isn't enough to kill him. Nanas put Haruto out of her mind and activated her first very familiar skill, Hellfire. Blue flames shot out from her serpent-headed spear, surrounding Quasia and creating immense pressure. This was the second time Haruto had witnessed this skill, and he felt it was just as stunning as the first time. This only strengthened Haruto's resolve to copy it in the future, no matter what. As for him, he had already landed safely thanks to the web-shooting skill he'd copied from the giant Spider King. No matter how magnificent Nanas's hellfire was, Haruto's current concern was still only the longsword Kalisha. But he didn't expect that this chaos was all part of the plan of another mysterious group, and their goal was also to steal the dragon longsword, though Quasia's appearance was something they hadn't counted on. And that monster could take anyone's life, but their captain was quite sure that Nanase and the members of the Hunters Association could subdue it. Therefore, he wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to steal that treasure. Meanwhile, Haruto was still moving cautiously across the bridge full of monster corpses. Looking at the fatal wounds on their bodies, he was pretty sure this was the work of another group of hunters. The most noteworthy problem when facing this type is, they usually travel in packs. For some reason, Haruto had a very bad feeling. It's okay, just run. Suddenly, someone screamed, making him jump. It turned out to be that rich kid, Satoru. It's a mystery where this young man got the motivation to stick around here fighting monsters all this time. His colleague was heavily injured and completely unable to fight anymore, even though he advised Satoru to listen to him and run. But he absolutely refused. Haruto hid behind a car to observe the situation. Although he didn't know them well, he still recognized these two as hunters. They were from the Dungeon Intrusion Management Office. He also saw the other guy's injuries. At first, Haruto tried to convince himself not to meddle in other people's business because he didn't have much time, but then his earlier bad feeling came true. The pack of level 15 wolf monsters had gathered and were closing in. Even though they were low-level monsters, when they attack in a pack like this, their strength is no different from a high-level monster. Satoru could clearly see his difficult reality, but he stubbornly gripped his sword, saying he couldn't leave because his senior was injured. While he was covering for me, "Senior, now it's my turn to protect you." These words made Haruto pause. He remembered the scene of himself carrying Aoi in the giant king spider's dungeon. Haruto's compassion flared up intensely once again. How could he possibly ignore a situation like this? At first, when the wolf pack surrounded Satoru and his senior, he could still manage to kill a few of them. However, their numbers were just too large, and they all attacked at once. So he quickly found himself at a disadvantage. While Satoru was busy fighting off the wolves attacking him head-on, one had silently approached him from behind. And by the time he realized it, it was already in midair, pouncing towards him. At this speed, Satoru had absolutely no way to dodge in time. And then, Haruto appeared like a god, using his own body to knock the wolf off its original attack trajectory. His appearance made Satoru very grateful. But the problem still wasn't solved because the wolf pack was growing larger by the second. Satoru didn't want to drag an innocent person into this. So he yelled for Haruto to leave quickly and let him hold them off, but little did he know he'd run into a guy even more stubborn than himself. Looking at the ferocious wolf pack, Haruto suddenly flashed a sly grin. He knew what he had to do. With that thought, Haruto opened his storage and took out the adhesive fluid of the giant king spider. He had originally planned to auction it, but using it in a spectacular battle like this was well worth it. Haruto continuously copied and pasted the spider silk. Strands were shot out relentlessly, tying up one wolf after another, and finally gathering them into one big pile. He had successfully subdued the wolf pack, but he only gained 2 levels, so his disappointment was obvious. Haruto's only consolation was that spider silk skill. It's quite useful against monsters that attack in swarms. As long as he uses it, he can pretty much win without even lifting a finger. Meanwhile, that kid Satoru had been staring at Haruto the whole time without blinking. He couldn't possibly imagine what kind of skill he had just used. How could he take care of that many? Bloodthirsty wolves in a single move? Satoru was so surprised he even forgot to say thank you. In the end, it was the injured man who spoke up first. "Thank you so much for saving us. You must be a member of the rescue team from the Hunters Association, right?" Yes, Haruto answered sheepishly. After all, they did arrive on the same helicopter, so it wasn't exactly a lie, right? "In that case, I'm sorry, but could you take him with you?" The man continued with his request, but before Haruto could even answer, Satoru started throwing a fit. He didn't want to abandon his senior in a time of crisis. Even if he had to die in battle, he wanted them to be together. "You idiot! It's safer to go with him!" The other guy was at a loss for words, not knowing how to persuade the kid. Haruto stood to the side, watching the drama and thinking to himself, "Oh, this scene is just like, if my senior doesn't make it, I'm ready to be buried with him." However, he couldn't agree to the man's request. After all, he only knew how to copy and paste. Taking the boy with him would only put him in more danger. Haruto had no other choice but to open his storage and take out a mid-grade healing potion, handing it to the injured man. "You won't be able to fight, but I guarantee this potion will help you recover enough stamina to move somewhere else. You shouldn't stay here any longer." The man seemed astonished. He even asked Haruto in return, "Why would you give me such a valuable item?" "Because you have to survive and return with your junior," Haruto replied, speaking as much to the other man as to himself. And the image of him now, through Satoru's eyes, was just insanely cool. In his eyes, Haruto was now no different from a hero. Therefore, he decided to bow a full 90 degrees as a sign of his gratitude, as a way of showing his utmost respect. "My name is Shinoda Satoru, a guardian of the Yenbao Bridge Dungeon. Please, At least remember my name someday. I will definitely repay you for saving my life." Haruto, who was about to leave, stopped in his tracks at those words. Instead of someday, he felt Satoru might as well repay him today. So Haruto asked him to help find the International Hunters Association transport vehicle carrying the longsword, because he was, in fact, hopelessly bad with directions. Haruto's target, the vehicle with the sword, was still being attacked by that Bear King. Ares was exhausted from constantly casting defensive magic, so she decided to put it to sleep. Moji mocked her, saying that a hunter who always uses non-violent methods is no different from a monk. But this time, before the two could even start bickering, a new threat arrived. With his sharp reflexes, Moji managed to draw his sword in time to slice a hidden weapon in half that had just been thrown at them. He had already anticipated that someone might try to take advantage of the chaos to steal the longsword. However, when the opponents revealed themselves, even the ever-calm Ares' expression changed. The moment the mysterious group of thieves appeared, they immediately launched an attack. Setting aside their actual strength, their numbers alone overwhelmed the two of them. But Moji remained as chill as ever, even though he was currently just an escort. Still, the power of a hunter over level 100 was nothing to scoff at. After blocking the first blow, Moji even wanted to charge forward and counterattack. Ares was so scared she lost her composure and quickly tried to stop him. But it was too late. Moji suddenly collapsed to his knees, blood trickling endlessly from the corner of his mouth. Even he didn't know how he'd been hit. Ares rushed over to him. "Those people! They're using some kind of item to prevent mana absorption for a period of time. If you keep fighting, you'll die." "The mage here is quite perceptive," the leader on the other side spoke up, though his tone was more mocking than complimentary. "We are not underestimating you. This is simply how we do things." "This is how you do things?" Ares found it ridiculous. Using a poisonous item strictly banned by the International Hunters Association, and not even hesitating to use it on another person. "If that's the case, I guarantee you'll regret it." Before she could finish her sentence, a golden aura appeared at Ares' fingertips, a sign that she was casting a spell. But the group of criminals wasn't scared at all. In fact, they were scornful. "What can a mage who can't even use mana possibly do?" "You should shut your mouth." They split into two groups, one to deal with Moji and Ares, and the other to steal the sword. But just then, because Ares' magic had been nullified, the Bear King woke up again. It immediately used its claws to sweep away all obstacles in its path, the once numerous army of thieves. It was turned into a pile of mangled flesh in an instant. Seeing that the situation had turned sour, their leader quickly retreated to save his own skin. And then, the bear began to approach Ares and Moji. "You can't put it back to sleep, can you?" Even though he already knew the answer, Moji asked anyway, hoping for a miracle. "You should know the answer to that. We can't use mana right now. I knew one day your non-violent tricks would come back to bite you. Looks like today's the day." "You're right! But there's one thing you're mistaken about, Moji." Ares suddenly rushed forward, trying to cast her spell, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't absorb mana, so she still couldn't use her skill. Moji was scared out of his wits, but Ares was already in a bind. At this rate, she was charging straight into the enemy's claws. Ares herself had given up, only regretting that she couldn't apologize directly to her companion. Then, just at that moment, Haruto appeared again. With his copy-and-paste ability, he used the same old trick, using the giant Spider King's adhesive to bind the Bear King's limbs. He then swiftly rushed forward and wrapped it into a cocoon. Because the substance was so sticky, the more the bear struggled, the tighter it became entangled, until it finally collapsed to the ground. Haruto had scored another victory, taking down the Bear King in the blink of an eye. Satoru's group, who had followed him, happened to witness the whole thing. All they could do was give a thumbs up to praise that absolutely top-tier, mind-blowing performance. "Haruto-senpai, you're seriously the GOAT!" Satoru's mouth was like a megaphone. "To be precise, when exactly did I become your senpai?" Haruto yelled through gritted teeth. They were clearly the same age. "You saved me and Sakabe-senpai. From that moment on, you became a senpai in my heart." Satoru's eyes seemed to sparkle and shine. He looked at Haruto with eyes full of adoration. Haruto knew that nothing he said would get through to Satoru anymore, so he just decided to ignore him. Haruto took a few steps forward. He asked about Ares and Moji's condition. Ares seemed to still be in deep shock after what she had just witnessed, so she didn't react to Haruto's question at all. Moji, on the other hand, used his sword to shakily get to his feet, his eyes filled with hostility as he looked at Haruto. "Are you also here for the sword?" Haruto quickly waved his hands, saying he was here to help the two of them protect the sword and had no ill intentions. However, Moji had just been through an earth-shattering robbery attempt. He had almost lost his life, so it wasn't easy for him to trust Haruto just like that. Hearing him talk about the robbery, Haruto finally noticed the corpses scattered around and let out a small, "Oh." So, those were the guys who wanted to steal the treasured sword, but were unlucky enough to be sent to meet their makers by the Bear King. Then you should be thanking that bear, but hello. If those guys had succeeded with their scheme, you wouldn't have stood a chance of getting near the longsword. But now, figuring out how to explain this to Moji is also a real headache. Because this guy looks like he's ready to draw his sword at any moment. He could bind a monster in a single move, but not a hunter with combat abilities as formidable as his. While Haruto was probably still thinking of what to say, Satoru yelled at the top of his lungs, "Wait! Why are you two repaying kindness with hostility? He tried to help, even saved your lives, and now you're treating him like a thief?" With that, Satoru took out his employee ID to prove his identity. "He's a member of the Japan Hunter Association, and I and Senior Sakabe are the hunters responsible for managing this dungeon." Perfect. This was the first time Haruto had seen Satoru's interruptions be useful. Seeing that Moji seemed to be calming down, Haruto decided to push things along a bit more. He took out 2 intermediate healing potions from his storage and gave them to them, even though it pained him to part with them for the sake of copying the longsword. Calicia, this investment was still worth it. Both Moji and Ares looked at the potions with incredibly mixed feelings, especially Ares. She kept looking from the Bear King to sneaking glances at Haruto, her thoughts unreadable. Just then, several more helicopters appeared overhead. It seemed the rescue teams from the 5 guilds had arrived. Satoru was so happy his grin stretched from ear to ear, thinking they were finally saved. But Sakabe didn't seem so sure about that, because in reality, not every hunter was compassionate enough to go around saving people. The people from the Daiken Guild, for example. At the same time, Nanas, the leader of the hunter team, was still fighting the monster Quesia. Because it was about to enter its 3rd phase, a wide-area firepower assault, she had ordered a halt to their attack. Besides, the support guilds had already arrived, so the top priority Nanas set was to buy time for the civilians to evacuate in time. "Is this how you people handle such a pathetic dungeon break, huh? Hunter Nanas?" Just as Nanas gave the order to assist with the evacuation, she heard a mocking voice from behind her. She turned her head, and it was a familiar face. Shirosaki Masato, a level 503 Warlock-class hunter, and also the guild master of the Future Guild. He had an extremely unpleasant face. The moment he appeared, he cast a massive magic formation aimed at destroying Quesia. Seeing this, Nanas's expression changed. "Stop it, right now! If that magic of yours fails to take it down, then—" Before she could finish, Nanas was cut off by Masato. "If I worried about trivial things like you do, how could I have achieved what I have today? Last time, also on this Dianbao Bridge, only you and the Hunter Association participated in stabilizing the dungeon. Let me tell you, that incident really pissed me off. And for that very reason. This dungeon break event was making Masato very excited. He wanted to finish off Quesia himself and hoard all the loot dropped by the monster. Having said his piece, Masato immediately activated his Black Lightning skill. Thunder and lightning instantly crashed down. Nanas urgently ordered everyone to evacuate from that lightning. Even a massive monster like Quesia couldn't withstand it. If tiny humans like them were hit, what would be left? Masato's Black Lightning had destroyed the middle section of the bridge. Thanks to his thread-weaving skill, Haruto managed to escape. He also managed to use his adhesive threads to grab the other 4 people, and the truck carrying the longsword. Otherwise, the whole group would have fallen into the river. After climbing back onto the bridge, the first thing that met Haruto's eyes was a set of large, sharp teeth. When he realized it was Quesia, he was so scared he clamped his mouth shut. But then, Haruto realized it seemed to be unconscious. It looked like it had been subdued. Right after, Masato leisurely descended from above, hovering in the air right in front of Haruto with a look so proud it was arrogant. "What's this? There are still survivors over here?" he asked nonchalantly. "You look like just some low-level hunter, but you did well." Haruto didn't want to respond to such condescending remarks. His gaze fell on the emblem pinned to the man's chest. He had seen that symbol before, so he quickly recognized it as belonging to the 3rd-ranked guild in the country, Future. "You look like you're from a support guild, but isn't your objective supposed to be rescuing civilians and stabilizing the escaped monsters?" A moment later, Haruto finally spoke, his first sentence a direct question. "Rescuing civilians and pacifying monsters? Look over there. All the surviving civilians have already been evacuated," Masato replied dismissively. The reason he had landed here was because of an annoying crying sound. It didn't belong to Quesia, but to the Bear King that was bound in spider silk. Masato could tell just by looking that this silk belonged to the giant Spider King. And with just a flick of his finger, he could make the supposedly unbreakable thing snap apart along with it. The Bear King's body was torn into 100 pieces. It would be a lie to say he wasn't scared. Haruto's eyes widened in shock as he watched the man make short work of the level 200 monster that was tightly bound in King Spider silk. In an instant. After the Bear King was sent to the afterlife, Haruto, having dealt the most damage to it, received a lot of experience points. The continuous sound of leveling up notifications made Masato take notice. Is that the sound of leveling up? Did you catch that furry thing just now? Oops, sorry for snatching your kill. Masato's tone was filled with contempt. He didn't even bother to hide his disdain. He openly mocked Haruto. The reward for finishing off the Bear King was a bear claw, which Masato tossed to Haruto like charity, saying he didn't need it, so he was giving it to him. Even though the other guy was a level 503 hunter, Haruto couldn't stand his arrogance. He opened his mouth, about to retort, when Nanas suddenly appeared, looking frantic. Seeing Haruto still alive and well, Nanas let out a sigh of relief. Her intuition had been right about the series of dangerous events. They weren't enough to take Haruto's life. As for Masato, after seeing that the two knew each other, he automatically assumed Haruto was a member of the Japanese Hunter Association. This only made him find the kid even more annoying. The rescue team is over there handling the evacuation. You should go join them. If that dragon wakes up, it's going to launch a series of wide-range attacks. Nanas couldn't be bothered with that bastard. She turned to warn Haruto, who looked confused. Isn't it better to just kill Quasia while it's unconscious? But Nanas just shook her head regretfully, saying it was impossible. The thing is, boss monsters are classified by their ability points. When their life energy, or HP for short, drops below 30%, they activate their ultimate move. This move has two forms, Berserk and a wide-range attack, both of which cause the boss to start attacking erratically. Low-tier boss monsters, and mid-tier ones usually fall into that Berserk state. In that situation, you just have to be extremely careful with them. And Berserk mode doesn't necessarily have separate phases. However, a high-tier boss like Quasia has a massive amount of HP, so it can activate both ultimate moves, Berserk and a wide-range attack. That's why subduing it must be done in phases. Phase 3 begins when the boss senses a threat to its life. It's rumored that they unleash attacks as ferocious as an atomic bomb, powerful enough to obliterate everything in the vicinity. This Quasia is in Phase 3 right now. It's absorbing mana from the surrounding area and creating a protective barrier for itself during this time. No matter how powerful our attacks are, they'll be useless. That's why the only option is to quickly evacuate the civilians to avoid casualties. Just as Nanas finished speaking, Quasia's eyes suddenly snapped open. She clicked her tongue in frustration. The monster woke up even sooner than she'd imagined. Masato, however, was still brimming with confidence. He wanted to turn Quasia into his own personal prize before the shockwave was unleashed. Hunter Sano, I trust you'll survive this shockwave too. Nanas rephrased her words to warn Haruto to be careful, but Masato found the whole thing laughable. How could he possibly survive? If you do end up kicking the bucket, don't you dare blame us. After all, a low-level hunter dying in a dungeon is just like a civilian dying in a traffic accident. With that said, both Masato and Nanas charged toward the monster. Only Haruto was left. He quietly stored the Bear King's claw in his inventory, only one thought running through his mind. The Guildmaster of Future, wasn't it? This was never part of my plan, but it looks like I'll have to take down Quasia before you do. You bastard Shirosaki Masato, consider this my revenge for what you just did. Just then, Haruto pulled up Satoru and Ares. He said he had a favor to ask Moji and Ares. Their lives were all in danger because Quasia had entered Phase 3. The only way to save everyone was to defeat it before it launched its wide-range attack. Haruto wanted to be the one to do it, and to do that, he needed the longsword, Kalisa. Haruto also swore on his honor that he would return it to its proper place after defeating Quasia. But to be honest, this mission wasn't going to be easy at all, especially when facing someone as stubborn as Moji. He felt it was impossible for Haruto to defeat Quasia, and that he was just making up a story to steal the sword. Ares also refused his request, but for a different reason. Unlocking the transport vehicle required a massive amount of mana, and right now neither she nor Moji could use mana. They had been poisoned by those robbers. Moji was shocked to hear Ares say that. It was as if she was saying that if she had enough mana, she'd willingly open the transport vehicle to let Haruto borrow the sword. Coincidentally, mana was the one thing he didn't lack. After all, his dungeon alias was Mana Gopher. With his endless mana regeneration skill, Haruto caused a rich flow of mana to course through Ares' body. All on her own, she broke the seal on the transport container that was suspended by spider silk, and Haruto quickly dashed towards it. Watching his retreating figure, Moji was still baffled. Ares, why did you do that? What if you go soft on him and something happens? Don't worry. He only tied up the Bear King earlier. He didn't kill it. Moji let out a long sigh. Is that all it takes to move you? So naive. At that moment, Haruto had thrown open the truck's cargo container, but something unexpected happened. The leader of the sword-stealing gang from before suddenly appeared behind him. It turned out that after his original plan failed, he had been secretly following Haruto, waiting for this very moment. He couldn't react in time and was stabbed through the stomach by his opponent's sword. Ares' group saw the whole thing from the bridge, but they couldn't do anything, because the truck was still hanging precariously. Stabbed through, Haruto immediately fell to the bottom of the container. That bastard followed right after him. His filthy hand reached the case containing the treasured sword. But just then, the spider silk holding the truck snapped because its owner was dead, rendering it useless. The truck instantly lost its support and plunged straight into the river. Of course, with his main character plot armor, Haruto couldn't possibly die in such an anticlimactic way. Just like before, he had already copied himself, waiting to paste it and save himself the moment he took a fatal blow. When the thief saw Haruto, reappear behind him, he jumped in shock, and before he could even react, Haruto drew his sword and stabbed him through the chest. He was the type who held a grudge and always got his revenge. If someone attacks me, I will definitely strike back. Those were the last words the thief heard before collapsing. After so much trouble, Haruto had finally managed to touch the long sword, Kalisha, the one he had dreamed of for so long. Haruto eagerly tried to copy it, but the system sent a red alert, stating his level was not high enough to copy this item. Haruto felt like he'd just been slapped hard across the face. Was the system messing with him? It clearly said Wields could equip the long sword at level 30, and he was level 50 now. Before Haruto could even process this, a voice came from behind him. That was close, kid. I almost brought shame to the Blood Tower Guild. Haruto didn't even have time to turn around before a long gash was cut across his back. Turns out that bastard wasn't dead yet, all because he possessed a skill. A pretty decent healing skill at that. The long sword in his hand was once again snatched away by his opponent. Sorry about that. I'm also the type to repay a grudge 1,000 times over. To make sure you never see tomorrow's sun, I'll use the very sword of your dreams to finish you. As soon as he finished speaking, he used the long sword Kalisha to stab Haruto again. This time, he hadn't had time to copy his body. Haruto felt his consciousness start to fade. But he's the main character. How could the main character's life end here? Sure enough, right after that, a system notification popped up, saying that the long sword Kalisha had merged with its wielder. Its abilities were being copied and absorbed. Haruto immediately felt himself become clear-headed again. Although he didn't know what merged meant, he then absorbed the sword's passive skill, increasing his defense by 35%. After that, Haruto also acquired its first special skill, Lifesteal, and its second special skill, Berserk. Additionally, since Haruto's HP was now below 25%, the long sword immediately activated its protection mode. To protect him, the second special skill, Berserk, was also forcibly activated at the same time. The monster Kuesia had also begun a wide area attack. The situation was so bad that even that Masato guy couldn't maintain his chill demeanor anymore. Nanas was still struggling to fight back, but the power gap between them was too obvious. Just then, a terrifying surge of power rose from the river below. Before Nanas and Masato could even figure out what it was, Kuesia was sliced in two by that power. That monster had been defeated. The purge was now complete. That night, the TV was filled with news about the monster breakout from Rainbow Bridge. Although there were casualties and significant damage, the Hunter Association and the guilds had successfully brought the situation under control within 2 hours. The Dungeon Access Management Office was being severely criticized by the public for its lax procedures. At the Japanese Hunter Association headquarters, everyone's face was as tense as if they were at a funeral. To break the silence, Fuga Tokuo, the association's president and a priest-class hunter, had no choice but to speak up first. Now is not the time to be making sour faces. We need to review and discuss how Kuesia was defeated. I heard the association already purged the Rainbow Bridge dungeon 3 months ago. Why did this situation happen? The one who responded was Takel Chigu, a level 701 swordsman and the guildmaster of the Midas Guild. A purge is a purge, but there's no guarantee something won't happen again. This time, it was Shinoda Makoto, a level 610 healer and guildmaster of the Great Sage Guild, who spoke up. The moment Makoto spoke, the entire room erupted into an uproar. Everyone thought he should shut his mouth, because a large part of the responsibility for this incident fell on the Great Sage Guild for not managing the dungeon properly. They were also grumbling and threatening that after this matter was settled, they would definitely submit a report to transfer the management responsibility of the Dienbao Bridge to another guild. Nanas was also present at the meeting, but all the noisy arguments seemed to have nothing to do with her, as she was busy wondering if Haruto had managed to escape that disaster. Because she still hadn't had a chance to see him again. Suddenly, Gu rudely slammed the table and stood up, then growled, "What I want to know is, the last time a monster lord appeared was supposed to be months ago, wasn't it? If you, Hunter Nanas, were present at the scene at that time, and you couldn't handle Kuesia, then what?" Hearing her name mentioned specifically, Nanas snapped out of her private thoughts. She mimicked what Gu had just done, slamming her hand down on the table with all her might. The table was already rickety after Gu's outburst. Now, under the additional force from Nanas, it shattered into pieces. Masato, on the opposite side, seemed to have anticipated this, so he had already activated a shield and continued to calmly sip his tea. The others who weren't as quick to react could only endure the fragments of the table flying straight at them. Nanas' action was like giving Gu a taste of his own medicine, making him furious. If this weren't a serious meeting, the two of them would have probably lunged at each other by now. "Guildmaster Takaichi, it seems a member of mine has just behaved rudely. I will apologize to you on her behalf." Furthermore, Chairman Tokuo spoke up first, so Gu couldn't settle the score with Nanas. He could only grumble, "Such impudence. If she keeps showing off like that, she'll get herself killed sooner or later. You'll see." Facing pressure from the master of a top-tier guild, Nanas, a woman, showed no fear. She slowly stood up and said, "They say seeing is believing, and I find that a demonstration is the quickest way to convince you. So please don't misunderstand. The skill I just deployed was a reward for defeating, the recent Quassia. It's called Shockwave. Guildmaster Shirasaki, who also contributed to taking down Quassia this time, can vouch for me. Masato was still calmly sipping his tea. Suddenly, he was dragged into the matter by Nanas. Under the gazes of everyone in the room, he nearly choked on his tea and snorted it out his nose. Ah, well, to be honest, I didn't really have time to see what the reward was, but I don't think she's lying. Since Masato had spoken up, Chairman Tokuo quickly seized the opportunity to put him in the spotlight, praising his contributions during the disaster. This time, the entire room immediately gave Masato a round of applause, like a first grader who had answered a question correctly. On the surface, Masato just gave a strained smile to get it over with, but his gaze remained fixed on Nanas. He knew right away that she still held a grudge against him for jumping in and interfering, only to gain no benefit from it. Masato swore that he would definitely get his revenge and redeem himself not only against Nanas, but he also had to find the mysterious figure who had taken down Quassia in a single blow, stealing his thunder. Nanas didn't want to linger in this noisy, disorderly place any longer, so she made an excuse to leave. Regarding the cause of the recent breakout, she proactively took responsibility and would investigate it herself. In addition, Nanas bluntly stated that she also wanted to question the guilds for their delay in sending aid. As soon as she said this, several guildmasters looked up at the ceiling and down at the floor, not daring to meet her piercing gaze. But then, before Nanas could even leave, the doors to the meeting room burst open. The one who appeared was Moji, now dressed in an elegant suit, along with his companion Ares. Excellent. It seems the meeting isn't over yet. Moji introduced himself and said that he had brought important news to share with everyone. That news was that the long sword Kalisha had been stolen during the chaos. And because the incident occurred while it was being transported to an exhibition in Japan, Moji requested that this country's Hunter Association assist him in recovering the sword as soon as possible. Of course, he also brought an official proposal for cooperation from the International Hunter Association. The moment Gu heard this, he immediately spoke up to object. Even though he wasn't personally at the scene, he was second to none when it came to picking up gossip. Hold on. I heard that when the transport vehicle was attacked, you people unsealed it yourselves? That's right, we did. But it was with the cooperation of Hunter Shinoda Satoru of the Great Sage Guild and Sano Haruto of the Japan Hunter Association, Ares replied. Her words made two people jump in surprise. Those two were the Guildmaster of the Great Sage Guild and the Chairman of the Japan Hunter Association. However, while Guildmaster Makoto acknowledged Satoru as a member of his guild, Chairman Tokuo couldn't find any report about a hunter named Sano Haruto in his association. Hearing the familiar name, Nanas's hand unconsciously clenched into a fist from the tension. Masato saw this expression on her face and couldn't help but let out a cunning smile. It looked like his chance for revenge had arrived even sooner than he'd expected. Masato immediately spoke up. You're talking about the person who tied up the Bear King with Giant King Spider Silk, right? I also met him on my way, and surprisingly, I was also convinced that he was a member of the Hunter Association. Then in that case, we should ask Hunter Nanas, shouldn't we? Moji once again directed the attention toward Nanas, as Masato had deliberately, yet seemingly accidentally, mentioned that she and Haruto knew each other. Moreover, it was Nanas herself who had agreed to let him board the association's rescue helicopter. At the same time, that thief had brought his prize, the longsword Kalisha, back to his master. His master is Kurosaki Takumi, a hunter with an attack-type class, level 301. And he is the guild master of the Black Guild, Blood Tower. As he held the treasured sword in his hands, Takumi couldn't hide his excitement. So this is the sword they say can raise its owner's level by 200, huh? Maybe it recognizes its owner by fingerprint. That's amazing. Spent hundreds of millions just to stir things up in that dungeon. Totally worth it, he mumbled. That was when the thief finally realized who was behind this whole operation. It was his own guildmaster just then. Takumi brought up how the entire raiding party had been wiped out, with only this captain left alive. He thought his boss was about to blame him, so he fearfully bowed his head. I'm so sorry. On this mission, I ran into some weirdo, but please rest assured, sir. He's definitely dead. Takumi pondered for a few seconds, then tossed a bag of money in front of the man, saying it was a reward for him and for his fallen comrades. Once this was over, he would be free to do as he pleased. The captain received the money and thanked him profusely, but before he could even grab the cash and run, Takumi started to laugh. Heh. But this mission was a failure, wasn't it? The man jumped. Huh? What are you talking about? This sword was only part of it. What kind of idiot would sell it for just 1 million? You were also planning to make some money off this legendary sword, weren't you? The man didn't understand the deeper meaning of Takumi's words, but he knew it meant he was planning to silence him for good. In a panic, he grabbed the bag of money and tried to run, but the sword in Takumi's hand flashed, and in an instant, the man who was alive and well right in front of him was sliced in two, and because of this, the durability of the longsword Kalisha dropped by another 2 points from 10 down to 8. Takumi clutched his head with a bitter laugh. Man! If this thing breaks before I can get it repaired, I'm in big trouble. Elsewhere, after a nightmare about the mysterious creature that had cursed him with this ability, Haruto woke up in terror. Before he could even shake off his panic, something suddenly threw itself into his arms. "Haruto-senpai, you're finally awake! You were unconscious for so long I was scared to death!" Turns out it was that annoying kid, Satoru. Haruto felt like he was just overreacting, but according to Satoru, the scene back then was truly terrifying. After you took care of that monster, a huge pillar of light shot up from the sea, and then, bam! The shockwave turned everything into a total mess. Just then, a man lying in the bed next to them overheard their conversation, sat up and asked, "Were you guys at the Wailing Bridge dungeon?" It was only then that Haruto noticed both he and the annoying kid were wearing patient gowns. It seemed they had been brought to the same hospital. After hearing the man's question, Satoru excitedly recounted the entire story to him from beginning to end. Haruto just couldn't keep up with this kid's energy, so he got out of bed, wanting to take a little walk. "He might not look it, but he's the one who saved you." "Hunter Sano!" Haruto stopped in his tracks. Turns out, Sakabe was also in the bed right next to him, though his injuries looked much more severe. According to Sakabe, Haruto had vanished back then. And it was Satoru who insisted on saving you at all costs. He even put pressure on the Great Sage Guild's reconnaissance team. This whole incident caused a huge uproar. In the end, they found Haruto unconscious on the shore. Haruto felt like something was off. Sakabe said that Satoru had pressured the Great Sage Guild's reconnaissance team to find him no matter what. But could a simple dungeon access manager really pull something like that off? Thinking back, Satoru's last name was Shinoda, wasn't it? And the guildmaster of the Great Sage Guild is Shinoda Makoto. Could those two possibly be related? No way. The moment the thought appeared, Haruto himself dismissed it. As if. This isn't some movie or drama with a plot twist like that. Meanwhile, at the headquarters of the Japan Hunters Association, the situation was still very tense. Nanas, Chairman Tokuo, Moji, and Ares had gone into a private room to talk. The latter two announced that, after the incident with the transport vehicle falling into the sea, Haruto had died. Nanas's expression didn't change in the slightest. This made Moji extremely uneasy. "You don't seem very surprised," he probed. "Well, hunters are still human. They can be close to the line, between life and death at any moment." Nanas calmly picked up her coffee cup and took a sip. Moji sighed, feeling that she and Haruto truly had no relationship whatsoever. Regarding the proposal to cooperate in finding the sword, and Chairman Tokuo had already agreed and promised to give his full support to retrieve the longsword Kalisha. Ares didn't beat around the bush and directly asked Tokuo for a few high-ranking hunters to help, because she already had a lead on the sword's location. Because the longsword Kalisha isn't a bound item, meaning an item that can only be used by certain people or those who meet specific conditions. Instead, it's engraved with a pattern used to identify the user's rank. Ares can sense and track that pattern. She also knows that someone used the sword about an hour ago. Hearing this, Nanas frowned slightly. There had never been any information before that they could investigate and track it using that engraved mark. So it seems this was the real reason they were willing to lend Haruto the sword. Ares continued with the most important issue, the sword's durability, which was previously only at a mere 10 units. Because someone just used it, that durability has surely decreased. If this continues, it will definitely disappear from this world for good. "Oh, so the only clue is to find your mother, Ares, the one who disappeared during the great catastrophe 15 years ago, right?" Nana suddenly spoke up. Her words left the two people opposite her utterly shocked. "How did you know?" Nanas held up the file she had been flipping through. "It's the classified file on you and Moji. Did you really think I became a captain purely by luck? Or what? We even know that precious sword is a memento from your mother." As Nana said this, Ares suddenly shot to her feet, her previous arrogant demeanor completely gone. She bowed 90 degrees and earnestly pleaded, "Hunter Nanas, please help me retrieve my mother's memento." After leaving the chairman's office, Nanas's mind was filled with thoughts. She felt that Moji and Ares were still hiding something. Besides, she didn't believe a word they said about Haruto, because she knew he wasn't the type to die so easily. Suddenly, Nanas heard someone call her name. Turning around, she saw it was Makoto, the guildmaster of the Great Sage Guild. He wasn't one for idle chatter, so if he was meeting her privately, he definitely had something important to discuss. And what Makoto wanted was to invite her back to the Great Sage Guild. After hearing this, Nanas just sighed and gave a sarcastic smile. The number of dungeons keeps increasing, and yet the major guilds that are supposed to be managing them are off establishing their own private companies. They only care about their personal interests, singularly focused on making a profit from the dungeons. And as for this recent dungeon break, and if it's traced back to the Great Sage Guild's negligence, then the entire guild will have to take responsibility. That's why I'm not coming back. Besides, there's still a lot of work to be done at the association. Dad. And here's the plot twist. Who would have thought that Nanas was the guildmaster's daughter? Makoto, for his part, knew she would react this way, so he could only chuckle. Actually, there's something else I wanted to discuss with you. Before leaving, he added, "You should stop by the Central Hunter Hospital." The Central Hunter Hospital was where Haruto was currently recovering. He was hiding on the rooftop, checking his status. Regarding the longsword, Kalisha, although he couldn't copy the physical blade itself, he was able to absorb all of its abilities. This turned out to be a much better deal, because if Haruto had simply copied the sword, pulling it out every time he got into a fight would have been impossible to explain. Above all, the sword's unique skills were incredibly useful, especially that berserk skill. It activated at the perfect moment, though it did trigger right before he was about to kick the bucket. So he had to endure some soul-crushing pain, but hey, thanks to that skill, Haruto was able to finish off Quesia, that terrifying over-level 400 monster, in a single blow. Looking back on it, Haruto couldn't believe he'd actually pulled it off. After defeating Quesia, its shockwaves were absorbed by him and automatically converted by the system into two skills, frequency resonance and natural wave. His giant king spider thread skill also leveled up to level 2. The best part was that he could now use frequency resonance or natural wave at the same time as the spider thread skill. Haruto never imagined his copy and paste skill could reach a level where it could absorb and synergize with other skills. It really was a blessing in disguise. After absorbing the sacred sword, he had officially become a high-rank hunter at level 276. This was nothing short of a miracle because just a few days ago, Haruto was still a nobody who couldn't even break past level 30. Now, he had to find the bastard who stabbed him in the transport truck and nearly killed him. Just as he was thinking this, Haruto suddenly heard a familiar voice, loud enough to pierce his eardrums. "Why do you have to make people worry so much? I told you to run away immediately if things got dangerous." Haruto realized it was Hunter Nanas. For someone usually so cold, to be making an expression like that. Haruto quickly ducked to the side to eavesdrop and see who she was talking to. He then heard an even more familiar voice say, "It's all your fault." "Sis, it's your fault for not stabilizing the dungeon properly." Nanas was speechless with anger, while Haruto was stunned by the scene in front of him. The person arguing heatedly with Nanas was none other than Satoru, and more importantly, he was calling her sis. Come to think of it, both of their last names were Shinodama. But he never imagined they were actual siblings. After Nanas and Satoru had a huge argument, she finally remembered Haruto. "So is Hunter Sano safe? Where is he?" "How should I know? Go find him yourself." Hearing his name mentioned, Haruto instinctively tried to slip away. He was afraid Nanas was here to settle the score, having discovered that he had faked his association membership and tried to steal the sword. So Haruto decided to turn and run, but before he'd taken even 2 steps, he slammed into a chest as hard as rock, nearly breaking his nose. Well, look who's still alive. Ha! Sword. Thief. The person standing before Haruto was Moji. He put a special emphasis on those words, making the extent of his fury perfectly clear. Moji immediately grabbed him by the collar and slammed him against the wall. He was furious at having been so thoroughly deceived by Haruto. Because of his fake guild member status, Haruto desperately wanted to explain that it was all just a misunderstanding. But Moji gave him absolutely no chance to speak. They had all seen him get stabbed by that thief, but now he was alive and well with no signs of serious injury. So, he concluded that Haruto was an accomplice of that bastard. Things only got worse from there. With a fiery gaze, Moji began to draw his sword. Just then, Ares appeared to stop him, but it was no use. Moji didn't intend to use a skill. He just wanted to make the guy who scammed him pay the price he deserved. Haruto really didn't want to activate his skill here, but he couldn't just stand still and take a beating like that. And the skill he used this time was frequency resonance. The moment the tip of the sword was about to touch Haruto's fingertips, it suddenly shattered into 100 pieces. The commotion caught the attention of both Nanas and Satoru. They ran over just in time to see Haruto use this move. Nanas recognized it the moment she saw it. It was just like Quasia's shockwave. It would be a lie to say she wasn't astonished, not to mention wondering how Haruto could even use this move. His aura, so completely different from the day of the disaster, was enough to make her see him in a new light. The perspective shifts with the appearance of another character, Aritasara. She's a member of the girl group, IF, but her life is completely different from the other members in her group. Because after a performance, instead of taking the company car, she drives her own luxury car home. Just as she was leaving the parking garage, Sarah almost crashed into another car blocking her way. She was so pissed that she rolled down her window and started shouting, "Are you blind? Where are you looking when you're driving?" The person in the other car opened their door, stepped out carrying a massive suitcase, and it was none other than Guildmaster Takumi of the H Guild. The moment she saw him, Sarah went silent. Takumi slowly walked over, slammed the suitcase in his hand onto the hood of her expensive car, then leaned his head in through the window. "Good performance? Now, shall we go to the dungeon? If you want things to go back to the way they were, you have no choice but to obey." As for Haruto, after Nana stepped in to resolve the situation, Moji finally decided not to settle the score with him, though he was still sulking. The 4 of them, including Haruto, Nanas, Moji, and Ares, began to follow the trail of that sacred sword. But when they arrived, all that was left was a scene of devastation. "Looks like we were too late." Aris said sadly. So does this mean we have to wait for that person to use the sword again? Nanas asked. But before Ares could answer, Haruto remembered something and exclaimed, Ah! Blood Tower! I just remembered. The culprit mentioned that name when he tried to kill me. He said he was from the Blood Tower Guild. Nanas had never heard of that name, so she immediately guessed it was a dark guild operating in secret. Moji, on the other hand, was looking very impatient. He knew the sword wouldn't last much longer. But Nanas already had a solution in mind with the small clue Haruto had just revealed, because she knew someone who was very well informed about these kinds of things. As for Sarah, the fact that Takumi sought her out proved that her identity was anything but ordinary, and that was indeed the case. Just like Haruto, she was one of the people blessed by a mythical creature during the disaster 15 years ago. At first, Sarah thought she had just awakened abilities like other hunters, but it turned out she possessed a one-of-a-kind skill. Undo, Control-Z, which allowed her to revert a target to its previous state. It was a skill that could be used on both people and objects. After that, Sarah began buying up damaged or discarded luxury goods. She would restore them and sell them in pristine condition. And even though it wasn't a restoration or healing skill, she could still make money by healing injuries. However, the amount of money she could earn with this skill was limited, and Sarah needed a lot of it because her parents were victims of that great catastrophe. They had fallen into a coma and were staying in a hospital with less than ideal facilities. Sarah had tried to heal them, but she couldn't restore them to their original state, because she didn't have enough mana to use the skill. Without mana, all she could do was restore minor injuries, and mana was a form of energy that only hunters could control. Therefore, to get even a little mana, Sarah risked her life entering dungeons with hunters from a very young age, acting as a luggage carrier and, when needed, a healer. But for someone like her, who hadn't awakened as a hunter, entering a dungeon was like walking into a tiger's den unarmed, always fraught with danger. However, what pained Sarah the most was the contempt from the others in the party, because after every raid, she would always ask each person for a little mana instead of payment. And every time, Sarah was laughed at, scorned, and looked down upon. Until one day when she was covered in injuries and utterly desperate, fed up with this curse-like skill, and just wanted to give up on everything. She met someone. That person was Takumi. Back in the present, Sarah had no choice but to lead Takumi to her home. Looking at the cramped and pathetically simple room, Takumi couldn't hide his surprise, mixed with a hint of mockery. Where did you burn through all that money you earned, huh? I can't believe someone as famous as Sarah from If lives a life like this. I bet no one would think you ordered takeout for all 3 of your meals, eating whatever you want. Takumi kept nagging about how Sarah eats whatever she wants. While other female idols desperately try to lose weight and stay in shape, Sarah could eat to her heart's content. Because even if she got fat, she could just restore herself to how she was before. After rambling for a while, Takumi started bringing up the first time they met. Back then, even when someone died right in front of her, Sarah was only thinking about stealing their items. Back then, after calling her a thief and boasting that they were 2 of a kind, he signed a contract with her. As usual, Takumi would gather enough mana and give it to Sarah, who would then help him restore the items he needed. However, this time, Takumi demanded that she enter a dungeon with him, even though their contract forbade it, because he wanted Sarah to fully restore that sacred sword, and that would consume an enormous amount of mana. Sarah, this will be the last time you have to enter a dungeon, Takumi said cryptically. Don't tell me. You mean you found an item that can regenerate infinite mana, and it's in that dungeon? Sarah immediately lost her composure. No. However, if you go, there's a chance it might appear. I know our contract restricts you from entering dungeons, but just this once. Come into the dungeon with me. This will be the last time, and the reward will be worth it. Right? Back with Haruto's group, the person Nanas mentioned as knowing everything turned out to be Masato from the Future Guild, even though she couldn't stand the guy. But she still had to take Haruto there. On the way, he found it very strange. Logically, the 2 guilds always competing for the #1 spot in Japan, Midas and Daihian, should have more information. They only have detailed intel on dungeon purges and management skills. But Masato, on the other hand, knows a lot of other inside information. And just as she'd said, he really did know about the Blood Tower Dark Guild. It all started with the Heart of the Giant Troll, an item known for its ability to regenerate infinite mana. It's a very rare item that appears in the Troll's Snow Mountain dungeon and only drops after defeating the hidden monster, the Giant Troll. In order to find that item, the Future Guild mobilized a huge scout force to gather information, and during that time, Future ran into the Blood Tower Dark Guild Haruto mentioned. Specifically, Masato found a hunter recruitment notice with a very low view count from the Blood Tower Dark Guild. They were recruiting 30 people level 90 or higher, equipment optional. Masato immediately guessed they were preparing manpower to conquer the Troll's Snow Mountain. After that, he began to dig deeper and found out this Dark Guild was even worse than he'd imagined. They committed theft and assassination, regardless of whether the target was an influential person or a dungeon-clearing hunter party. And because they were a Dark Guild, they didn't care one bit about being despised by others. Haruto listened intently to Masato's words. That thing called an item that can regenerate infinite mana. He didn't need it at all because he already had that ability, but it was true. It was an eye-opening item. According to Masato, someone clearly wanted to monopolize it. And if someone really did possess this item, what did it have to do with the Dragon Sword Kalisha? At first, Haruto thought they stole the sword to defeat the giant troll, but its durability was clearly too low. It couldn't even be swung more than a few times, so he quickly dismissed that theory. After some discussion with Masato, Nanas concluded that the Blood Tower Guild was targeting the heart of the giant troll. That's why they wanted to form a team to clear the troll's Snow Mountain dungeon. But this time, Ares spoke up in disagreement. She didn't think it made sense because ever since that hidden dungeon was discovered 15 years ago, no one has ever found that item. How do you know? Haruto asked. I can't go into specifics, but there was a time I was very interested in this dungeon, and I researched it myself. After all, the Troll's Snow Mountain is still a notorious dungeon due to its difficulty, and it's been classified as one of those dungeons that hunters typically avoid at all costs. Some hunter parties occasionally look for hidden dungeons, but even they've given up on this place. What's in that dungeon that would make seasoned assassins have to form a team? To clear it, I wonder? Masato revealed a cunning smile. It seemed he was also very interested in this matter. When are they leaving? Haruto asked again. Masato shrugged, indicating he didn't know for sure. Since the hunter recruitment was already over, they might have left a long time ago. Haruto gritted his teeth in anger. It seemed the enemy had been planning this for a very long time, which was why they'd devised such a precise plan to steal the sword. Since there wasn't much time left, Nanas demanded they leave for the Troll's Snow Mountain immediately. Coincidentally, at that moment, the Future Guild had a dedicated attack team that could depart right now. The moment she mentioned this team, the color drained from Masato's face. Who told you that? We don't have one. But I heard that the Future Guild has an attack squad on standby, and that squad is on par with the Hunter Association's attack team. Right? Masato shook his head repeatedly. There was truly nothing this girl couldn't dig up. But he didn't want to get involved in something that wasn't his business. Besides, the weather in that dungeon was extremely harsh. He had no reason to send his own troops into a place like that. And then, by some twist of fate, Nanas still managed to force Masato to dispatch his troops. What's more, he himself had to go with her. Right up until the moment they faced an army of level 40 stone trolls. I still don't get why I'm in this godforsaken place. These rock golems aren't actually that strong, but you have to shatter their cores to finish them off for good. Otherwise, they'll just keep regenerating, which makes them a real pain. Masato's army fought bravely, but the enemy just kept regenerating. So in the end, he had to take matters into his own hands. Masato's magic was no joke. Standing in one spot, he used his wand to make all the rock golems shatter, sending their life cores flying out. His soldiers just had to smash those cores before the rock golems' bodies could regenerate. Haruto witnessed the whole thing. I have to say, even though Masato seems flamboyant and unlikable, his power is truly impressive. It wouldn't hurt to let him play the hero for a bit, as long as those rock golems were dealt with quickly. According to Ares, after entering the goblins' Snow Mountain dungeon, they had to destroy as many rock golems as possible, because that was the condition to encounter the mid-level monster, the Snow Mountain Golem, according to her previous research. This dungeon was a sensor type, different from a normal dungeon which would typically be divided into zones like a small monster zone and a mid-boss zone, or a main boss or final boss zone. In a normal dungeon, if you knew the way, hunters could go straight to the final boss area. However, in a sensor-type dungeon, the condition for the next area to appear was a formula like A plus B plus C equals D. This meant they had to finish farming the small monsters to unlock the mid-level monster zone, and so on. And if they failed to meet even one of the necessary conditions, then the remaining areas wouldn't appear. Ares suspected this was due to the influence of the Great Disaster 15 years prior, which had disrupted the dungeon's processes. That was also why, until now, the hidden dungeon inside the goblins' Snow Mountain had never reappeared. In truth, Ares wasn't entirely sure about the condition for the mid-boss to appear, but after careful research, she felt that farming as many small monsters as possible was the most viable method. Moreover, they had to race against time. If the reward item from that monster was the key needed to open the next area, then the Dark Guild was surely aiming for it too. Therefore, they needed to get the key to the hidden dungeon before them. Haruto didn't give a damn what the Blood Tower's goal was, but he was determined to get back the longsword, Calicia, to return it to Moji and Ares. So he also joined the fight against the rock golems. This time, Haruto decided to use the giant Spider King's thread combined with his signature move, Shockwave. The spider thread bound the rock golem's legs tightly, while the shockwave smashed them into small pieces. Watching Haruto deal with these small fry looked relatively easy. Masato's soldiers were amazed to see him using the giant Spider King's thread from a low-level dungeon. They never expected something that seemed so useless could possess such incredible power. Ares wasn't taking it easy either. She and Moji teamed up. One used magic to separate the rock golem's cores from their bodies, while the other cleanly sliced through all the cores with a sword. Among the rock golems were some that were much larger and more ferocious. When Masato's army couldn't do anything to them, Nanas entered the fray. The power of Japan's top 5 hunter was not just for show. Like Haruto, she had also been rewarded with Quesia's shockwave skill, as she was the one who had dealt the most damage back then. With just this one move, Nanas effortlessly defeated the giant monster. "Is everyone all right?" Nanas scanned the area. It seemed no one was injured. "Yes, we're fine, thank you, Captain." It seemed like nothing special, but then Nanas suddenly spotted a very familiar back. Although this person was covered from head to toe, she eventually recognized him. Who else could it be but her damn little brother, Satoru? "Wait a minute, how did you get here?" Nanas fumed. Satoru wouldn't back down and immediately retorted, "Huh? Why? Can't I be here? I came as a member of my senpai's team." "Your senpai?" Nanas asked doubtfully. It turned out that back at the hospital, Satoru had thrown all sorts of tantrums to get Haruto to take him along, including lying on the ground, kicking and screaming. Satoru had even used the excuse that Haruto had a terrible sense of direction and might get lost in the dungeon, just to prove he would be useful even though Haruto wasn't going alone. Of course, he wasn't afraid of getting lost, but since the kid threw such a huge fit, he finally had to agree. Besides, the boy was very good with directions, so he might actually be useful. After Satoru explained that Haruto himself had agreed to let him come, Nanas could only bury her face in her hands and sigh. What was Hunter Sano thinking? "He's a low-level hunter himself, who can he possibly protect?" she muttered, not realizing her brother had heard her. Satoru immediately shot back, "Don't you dare look down on Mr. Sano. I saw it clearly back then. Neither you nor Chairman Shirosaki was the one who cut Quesia in half. It was him!" Satoru asserted firmly. Seeing how he defended Haruto, Nanas really didn't know whose little brother he was anymore. But what Satoru said wasn't entirely without reason. Seeing Haruto again this time, she herself realized he was completely different from when they were in the spider cave too, right after he landed. Furthermore, the skill he was using was Quesia's shockwave. If Haruto wasn't the one who finished it off, there'd be no reason for him to possess this skill. But she really couldn't comprehend it. How could a low-level hunter like Haruto possibly cut a monstrous beast like Quesia in half? Putting that aside, Nanas and the others continued to fight. But she had no idea that the members of the Dark Guild they were looking for had already infiltrated their own army. Meanwhile, Takumi and Sarah were hiding a good distance away, scanning the situation. His men have infiltrated that chaotic attack team, using stealth to hide, steal critical hits, and simultaneously snatch mana and items from high-level hunters like Nanas and Masato. They are truly powerful, but it's precisely because they're so strong that these guys aren't afraid of anyone. They don't focus much on honing their reconnaissance skills. In contrast, members of the Blood Tower Black Guild often find themselves in situations where the weak must take on the strong. That's why they've trained their stealth and weapon concealment skills to the highest level, making them almost impossible to detect. Takumi is certainly worthy of being the guild master of an organization full of assassins. Cold-blooded. The way he clears dungeons is both leisurely and effective. This is the very principle his guild operates on. He and Sarah just have to stand by and wait for the mana collected by Takumi's subordinates. It's all being transferred to the device in her hand right now, a mana generator. It's a luxury item. To fill one mana bar, you have to defeat at least 100 minor monsters. However, to restore the longsword Khaleesi, even that much mana is not enough. They must defeat the boss of the hidden dungeon, even though that hidden dungeon has never appeared before. Takumi has heard many people say that inside the dungeon. There's an incredibly strong barrier, and the only sword that can break it is the longsword Khaleesi. Sarah looks skeptical, wondering where Takumi got this information. But he doesn't even bother to answer. To him, Sarah's only mission is to restore the sword. "Don't ask so many questions," he says. Sarah can only sigh. "It's been a while since I've been in a dungeon, so I'm a little nervous, but your strategy this time is just so sneaky and despicable." Hearing this, Takumi's expression immediately darkens. Sarah notices and quickly tries to backtrack. "Don't mind what I said. As long as the contract is still valid, I don't care what you do." In truth, she can't stand Takumi's villainous methods, but she has to in order to save her parents. Sarah is also determined to get that infinite mana regeneration item down there. The situation was growing more and more tense. Haruto was starting to lose patience because they had already wiped out 200 stone monsters, but the condition to unlock the next area was still a mystery. Suddenly, he spotted a stone monster core that was completely different from the others. Out of habit, Haruto was about to copy and paste it, but the core in his hand suddenly shot away. It burrowed straight into the ground, and the earth began to rumble violently. Masato landed right behind him. "So, it's starting, huh?" "Starting what?" Haruto asked, completely clueless. "We've finished exterminating the stone monsters. The intermediate golem appears next. The mid-stage of the elf's Snow Mountain has arrived. This intermediate golem is level 150. It appears in an extremely aggressive state, attacking the moment it identifies an enemy. Because of its massive size, it launched a relentless barrage of boulder attacks. Nanas's vanguard team was immediately struggling, and even Haruto, who was no longer a low-level hunter, was being completely overwhelmed by the situation. Naturally, high-level hunters like Masato had to step up and take charge. A single blow from him split the giant golem into 1,000 pieces, instantly revealing its life core. But his subordinates didn't even have a chance to celebrate, as the golem rapidly regenerated before they could even deal with its core. Masato attacked again, but this time the result was the same. To have victory within reach twice only to have it slip away. This made him furious. Meanwhile, Haruto came up with a plan. What if, at the exact moment Masato separates the opponent's core, he uses the giant Spider King's silk to hold it in place? Wouldn't that work? They quickly gave it a try. Haruto actually managed to capture the core with the spider silk, but his silk was quickly crushed under the large rocks, regenerating into the golem's body. The giant spider silk didn't work as he had hoped. As Haruto was racking his brain for a solution, he suddenly heard a shout. "Hunter Haruto, fall back!" Haruto instinctively retreated almost immediately afterward. Nana's had unleashed her ultimate skill on the monster. This was the third time Haruto had witnessed her hellfire, and it was just as impressive as the first time. The giant golem's entire body was engulfed in breathtaking blue flames. Nana said, "Melee attacks are meaningless against this thing. We have to melt it." Masato, having had his spotlight stolen, couldn't hide his frustration. "I know that. That's why I was trying to think of another plan. Otherwise, trying to melt all the remaining rocks will kill us." Haruto looked around. They had defeated over 200 stone monsters, and the amount of broken rock from their bodies was truly immense. He remembered that before they set out, Ares had warned them about how terrifying this intermediate golem was. It's the most troublesome and also the most terrifying part of the sensor maze. Basically, the sensor maze reveals the next area when certain conditions are met, and the next area that is unlocked will also change based on the previous area. When the condition for defeating regular stone monsters is met, the intermediate golem's core will appear. The remains from the stone monsters' bodies will gather together and regenerate into the body of that intermediate golem. In other words, they would have to fight the remnants of the very stone monsters they had just struggled so hard to defeat. The usual result for previous hunter teams would be mental exhaustion, or even the entire party getting wiped out. Compared to a regular labyrinth, this intermediate golem is just as difficult. It was then, during the final boss, that Nanas came up with an idea, the very method she just used. If they couldn't break the core, they would have to melt all the stone so it had nothing left to regenerate with. But the amount of rock making up the golem's body was truly immense. Melting it cost Nanas a great deal of mana. She was already exhausted in an instant. The main problem was that while her flames were still blazing, the intermediate golem suddenly vanished, then reformed right behind Nanas. She had to use hellfire on the enemy once again. But keeping this up was too draining. It wasn't a good strategy. Haruto understood that well. He wanted to use the power of his longsword, Calicia, but Ares would notice immediately. Yet if they remained in this frozen stalemate, they'd never be able to destroy the core. At a loss, Haruto suddenly remembered something he had tossed in his inventory. He had never used it before. It was the Bear King's claw. Masato had thrown it to him back on the bridge. This treasured item granted 2 skills. First, it could hold any target in place for a certain period of time. Second, it could approach any target and deal damage to it. A satisfied smile spread across Haruto's face. This was it. The key to breaking this stalemate was this. He immediately used his copy and absorb skill. The first skill was loaded into Cantron 5. It allowed Haruto to lock down targets more tightly when using the giant king spider's silk. At the same time, the second skill was loaded into Cantron C, allowing him to pierce a target and absorb 15% of its HP and MP. After acquiring the new skills, Haruto eagerly charged forward, hoping everything would go as he planned. Meanwhile, Nanas was still sticking to her plan of melting the golem's body. Moji and Ares both looked quite concerned, because no matter how skilled a hunter Nanas was, if she kept casting hellfire like that, her mana would soon run out. Under the effect of the blue flames, the golem's body began to disintegrate. Nanas used hellfire again to apply more pressure, but this time it backfired. The golem went berserk and lunged at her, intending to counterattack. Hellfire was no longer effective. This also meant Nanas's mana had reached its limit. However, before the intermediate golem could even touch Nanas, it was bound tightly by Haruto's spider silk. This time, he used an exceptional amount of silk, wrapping it into a giant cocoon. Nanas was saved in the nick of time, joyfully shouting Haruto's name. At that moment, Masato couldn't hide his astonishment. His reaction was the same as everyone else's. They couldn't believe the giant king spider's silk could be this effective. Seeing him dazed, Haruto shouted to get his attention, "Guildmaster Shirosaki Masato, please attack again!" Being called by his full name, Masato jumped. "Huh? But can't you see? Attacking is useless!" "It'll be different this time. I'll stop the core from moving." "We don't have much time, so hurry up," Haruto said urgently. Masato gritted his teeth in anger at being ordered around. But in the end, he still unleashed his magic to attack once more. It came with a threat. If Haruto failed, he would beat him to a pulp. Masato's magic pierced through the thick layer of spider silk, destroying the intermediate golem's body. Large rocks scattered through the air, and its life core was exposed. Haruto seized this chance. He used the supercharged version of the giant king spider's silk, enhanced by the intermediate bear king's claw, to lock down the core. And this time, his plan succeeded. Not just Masato, but even Nana stared wide-eyed at the scene. But thinking back, Haruto always showed up at the crucial moment during every boss fight. It seemed she really couldn't keep looking at him as a low-rank hunter anymore. Using the Bear King's Claw? What a strategy. Only a hunter like Sano could come up with that. Ares also praised him admiringly. The attack team cheered continuously upon seeing this miraculous sight. It seemed that besides Satoru, no one believed that Haruto and his seemingly useless spider silk could pull off such a miracle. In contrast to their joy and excitement, Takumi and Sarah looked as if they were choking. He immediately ordered his subordinates to stop collecting mana to accelerate their plan and begin the operation. After putting on his mask, Takumi ordered all of them to get into position, ready for battle. What's going on? Is the situation so serious that you have to step in personally? Sarah seemed alarmed. That's right, it's because of that strange guy. Getting the key from the core seems like it'll be a bit more troublesome now. You should get ready too, Sarah. After receiving the order, Sarah quickly stood up from the white snow. At that moment, Satoru was using his stealth skill, hiding behind a large tree. To observe, he began to wonder to himself, what should I do? Looks like the one who seemed to be the leader has left. What is that girl planning to do with all that mana they collected? Should I report this to my senior? Just then, Haruto handed him a stone and said, Take this. It's a high-level stealth skill. Satoru was surprised. Are you sure it's okay to give me something so valuable? He scratched his head and declared, That's how important this job is. Satoru's jaw dropped in surprise. An important job. His gaze turned serious. Shinoda Satoru, this time you don't need to join the fight against the monster. Instead, use this stealth skill to follow them. If they find the hidden labyrinth, let me know immediately. We'll steal their plan. Remembering those words gave Haruto courage. He thought of Satoru once more and silently reassured himself. That's right. She and President Masato are both over there. Most importantly, our senior, Sano, is there too. His voice was filled with surprise. I have to destroy it? Masato turned his head and affirmed, Yes. Since you captured it, you should be the one to destroy it. Nana smiled and said, That's right. This is Hunter Sano's achievement, after all. He raised his sword, getting into position. All right, I'm really doing it now. Haruto was slightly taken aback. This is the first time I've been treated like this. It feels so weird. I finished copying it. Now to destroy it, quickly. And so he thrust the tip of his sword straight into the red orb, causing it to crack. The sphere instantly shattered into countless fragments and vanished. A short notification appeared. Mutated Golem has been defeated. It's done. A series of level-up notifications appeared around him. Following that, another system notification appeared. You have received a reward item for destroying the core. A golden key appeared, falling into Haruto's palm. It was the key of the heart's seal, which opens the door to where the golem's heart is sealed. He raised the key high into the air and shouted, I got it! The key to the hidden labyrinth! Mo exclaimed, celebrating for Haruto. I never thought I'd see one with my own eyes. How does it feel to be one step closer to your mother? Ares wore a confused expression. It's just a key. The real challenge starts now. While everyone was chattering excitedly, Haruto was focused on scanning his surroundings. He whispered softly, causing a notification panel to appear. Status check. He couldn't stop a smile from instantly spreading across his face. Whoa, sweet. With the upgrade from the longsword, I'm at level 285 now. That's almost as high as a high-rank hunter who are over level 300. The day I can go solo isn't far off now. Haruto jumped up and down with joy, under Masato's exasperated gaze. He turned his head away and muttered under his breath, celebrating so pathetically just for defeating a mid-tier boss. Nanas let out a soft laugh. And who was it that was just struggling with that mid-tier boss? Feeling like she was teasing him, he quickly retorted, I wasn't struggling. Suddenly, a series of loud explosions rang out, sending dirt and rocks flying everywhere. Mo and Ares had to quickly dodge to avoid getting hurt. Before everyone's astonished eyes, dozens of sharp spikes shot up from the ground. On the black spikes were lines of red text. Masato shouted in a loud voice, Hey, that's the sign of a Titan's emergence. This is bad. He urgently commanded his team, Everyone, fall back, behind my shield. But before he could finish, another explosion erupted, shattering their formation as a pillar of red light appeared. It lit up the entire sky. The uproar was followed by a deathly silence, as several people were already dead. A man slowly walked out, speaking. It's expensive, but the power is undeniable. It's true what they say, money can buy you anything, if you're willing to throw away a bit of your conscience. The man speaking was Takumi. It's a piece of cake. He let out a breath, constantly muttering, Productivity. Productivity! Suddenly, another, more decisive sound rang out, forcing him to pay attention. Found it. The notification panel appeared again at lightning speed. Thread weaving. A series of massive threads appeared in front of Takumi. From within them, Haruto lunged out with his sword. "Give it back!" he shouted as he charged forward bravely. Dragon longsword. "Khaleesi!" Suddenly, he coughed up a spray of fresh red blood. Takumi smugly launched an attack on him. "You may have been able to stop the explosion with that pile of threads, but that wasn't the only trap I prepared." He mercilessly struck Haruto in the stomach and side. "You nearly sent my whole plan down the drain." He threw Haruto away with all his might, sending dirt and rocks flying. "Damn you!" Nanas cried out in horror. "Hunter Sano!" She immediately raised her weapon as a surge of blue power erupted around her. Prison of torment. Ares, without a second thought, rushed forward. "No, Nanas!" But she was held back by Mo. "Stop, you'll get hit too!" A blue vortex shot straight towards Takumi, who was standing not far away. The vortex was so powerful that it cracked the ground. Suddenly, Nanas coughed. A spray of blood hit the ground. She planted the tip of her spear into the earth and collapsed, coughing violently. "Cough! Cough!" Masato looked over and immediately shouted an order. "Hunter Shinoda! Nanas! What's wrong? Use your healing skill!" Rushing to her side, she yelled in alarm. "President Shirasaki, don't use your mana." She quickly explained, "The Gigant's miasma absorbs mana. It must have been released at the same time as that pillar explosion earlier. This is the cowardly strategy they use to neutralize high-rank hunters," she wondered. Meanwhile, a black liquid was bubbling up from the ground. Why would they use something so dangerous? Takumi turned his back, leaving Haruto with a massive wound. Time to be productive. Masato gritted his teeth, his brow furrowed in disbelief. "No, I can't believe it, that skill." Seeing Takumi's unusual footwork made him even more stunned. "Is that Shadow Morph? The highest level stealth skill. That skill was supposed to have been eradicated by the previous generation of hunters because it was too dangerous. How did he—" The man turned his head, calmly looking around without a word. Suddenly, Takumi noticed the key that had fallen right next to Haruto. He slowly picked up the key in silence. A small notification appeared. "Key of the Heart's seal has been transferred to the current owner." Takumi let out a soft laugh. Mission complete. However, he didn't seem satisfied. He quickly grabbed the boy by the neck as Takumi growled, a red light flashing on his mask. "We have to kill him. Right here." Haruto spoke with difficulty, his voice laced with mockery. "I was just thinking the same thing." The man was momentarily surprised. "What? He's still conscious?" The corners of Haruto's mouth curved into a smug smile. "Well, lucky for me, the guy who stole the longsword is a piece of trash like you." A mass of threads shot out, enveloping Takumi before he could react. Gradually, the threads grew thicker and thicker, swallowing his screams. "Ah!" The notification panel appeared as sharp spikes emerged from the threads. Using giant spider's thread. Activating skill, one claw of the Bear King, Beerman. Jagged, sharp fangs emerged, all wrapped up in those threads. He's no different than a giant monster. The guys following Takumi started to panic. "What? Boss, that skill. Isn't that the one he used to defeat the golem? A transformation, huh? Perhaps we should get ready too." Haruto slowly raised his sword and stepped forward. "Your mistake," his calm voice rang out, "was touching my longsword. Release giant spider's thread." However, the expression on his face quickly turned to surprise. Where Takumi should have been, there was no trace of him. He appeared from within the shadows, letting out a soft sigh. "Whoa, that was close. That's the first time I've ever had to use a skill like that." Takumi roared like a complete lunatic. "If there hadn't been a shadow in there, I would have died for nothing, after almost being killed by a pathetic skill like that. Now I get why all those hunters I've killed died with such looks of regret on their faces. But no matter what, you're going to die here today." A brilliant light suddenly radiated from Haruto. "Hey, you know my nickname, right?" He stood up straight, making the light shine even brighter. "They call me the Mana Battery because I share my mana with my comrades. This is the first time I've ever tried it from this far away." "But it still worked?" Takumi was stunned. "What did you just say?" Haruto coldly declared, shocking him. "It means your life is over." Standing to the side, Masato also raised his voice. "I have no idea what's going on, but I'm overflowing with mana. I'm going to wipe out your entire Blood Tower guild right here and now." Just then, a red magic circle appeared in midair. It brought with it powerful black lightning. Takumi silently cursed to himself. "Damn it. Shirasaki Masato's wide-area black lightning. It's the perfect counter to my shadow transformation. He couldn't escape. This is bad." He quickly turned his head to the side and ordered, "Aridasara, do it. Reverse it." In response to her leader's words, a mysterious six-colored light shone from the mana potions. The mana potions resting on the ground were all uncorked at once. Like pillars of light, they converged on a single point under Sarah's control. She gritted her teeth, trying to execute the reversal her leader had ordered. A notification appeared with a single command. Resetting and restoring the Golem's Snow Mountain maze to its original state. The stone fragments began to vanish as if time itself was reversing. As the notification announced, resetting and restoring the dungeon to its original state, the entire world began to shake violently. Whoa! What's happening all of a sudden? The black and blue lightning bolts and the fierce winds threw the group into a deeper panic. What is this airflow? Amidst the chaos, someone immediately spoke up to explain, "This isn't a normal airflow. The remaining golems..." Before everyone's eyes, the golems began to piece themselves back together. They're reforming. Nanase's eyes filled with astonishment. That's... Masato, momentarily stunned, stammered out, "Don't tell me!" He looked off into the distance. There, the golems were slowly emerging from the thick mist. The dungeon is resetting? A golem charged forward madly, startling him. The golem's fist quickly collided with Masato's shield. Damn it, that gas! It's making it impossible for anyone to absorb mana. He glanced over at his comrades and thought to himself, Masato has to maintain the shield to protect the members. But like this, we can't fight the golems. At this rate, we're all going to die inside this protective shield. Is there any way? Suddenly, an unexpected event made his eyes widen in surprise. Nanase's green cyclones erupted once again, blowing away the golems. Masato's jaw dropped in utter disbelief. Hunter Nanase, you... She glanced back at him and said seriously, "You heard him a moment ago, didn't you? Hunter Sano's nickname." Nanase's voice was firm as she mentioned the nickname. The Mana Gopher. However, Masato didn't understand right away. So what? Ariz, who was busy healing, spoke up for her. He possesses the ability to regenerate infinite mana and transfer it to his allies. It's clearly a unique skill belonging to Hunter Sano. A seed of disbelief began to sprout in Masato's mind. Impossible! He stared intently at Ariz's hands as she healed Haruto. Only hunters of the priest class should have that ability. So why can Hunter Sano do it, when he's not even a priest? He glanced over at Nanase and Mo, who were fighting with all their might. High-level hunters like me and Nanase need a huge amount of mana to activate our skills. And it's not just limited to the two of them. He's sharing mana with everyone here. Sharing his own mana? In such a short amount of time? Masato gritted his teeth. Infinite mana regeneration! I've never heard of a unique skill like this before! But if it's real... Then his mind started racing with his own calculations. Instead of looking for the giant golem's heart, a better option would be to make Hunter Sano join Masato's guild! Suddenly, Nanase's voice rang out, grabbing Masato's attention. Now everything is clear, she said as she rushed into battle. Everything. Even what happened at the Rainbow Bridge dungeon, it was all the work of the Blood Tower Guild. Mo, who was blocking a blow from a golem, turned his head and shouted, "The important thing right now is that the dungeon has already been reset." What if they reset the dungeon again? But Ares' voice cut in, refuting that theory. No, I don't think that's possible. The reason the hidden dungeon has remained undiscovered until now seems to be due to a problem with the dungeon's logic, she said, focusing on her task. As she calmly explained, I don't know if they've realized it or not, but the probability of the hidden dungeon appearing is now 100% for sure. The moment she heard that, Nanase's gaze turned cold. But something strange compared to before. She calmly defeated the golem and continued, the number of golems appearing now is lower. Masato quickly realized the reason for this strange phenomenon. The golem that Hunter Nanase melted, it hasn't been reset. Either way, we need to finish things here quickly so we can track down those bastards from the Blood Tower. Even so, these thoughts still troubled her. If that's all there is to it, it's not a problem, but let's assume this is just like what happened at the Rainbow Dungeon before. What if they use the same method again? No, there's no way that can be true, right? Meanwhile, Masato couldn't help but worry about Haruto. Now that I think about it, I wonder if Hunter Sano is still okay. I hope those guys didn't send him to meet his maker. Somewhere on the snowy mountain, a giant spider silk cocoon lay still on the ground. Haruto emerged from inside, his body covered in injuries. Release. Damn royal giant spider silk. His eyes were now filled with rage and frustration. That bastard! Takumi suddenly appeared after a gust of cold wind. Without a second thought, he rushed forward, shouting, "Stop right there!" Their two swords quickly clashed, creating a sharp clang. The man looked at him and let out a sinister laugh. What exactly do you think a low-level hunter like you can do, huh? Despite Takumi's taunts, he stubbornly gripped his sword. Ha! This low-level hunter you're talking about is screwing up your entire plan. He once again used the royal giant spider silk to bind the man's hands. Takumi swung his arm, breaking free from the silk, and said in a low voice, "This silk is no better than a worm, an ant. Let me make it so you can never use this thing again." With that, he slammed his sword into the ground, knocking Haruto away. A bright light flashed as the man let out a heaven-shaking roar. Long Dragon Sword, Kalisha. Rank release! Haruto narrowed his eyes and quickly wrapped himself in spider silk. Last time, he'd used the silk to escape, but as he wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, he silently marveled, The power of the long dragon sword, Kalisha, is truly terrifying. But thanks to that, Haruto now knew how to use its power. Haruto planted his sword in the ground to pull himself up. Where the hell did he get such rare information? I couldn't completely block that attack. Well, maybe I should chase him down and force him to tell me everything. But the unfamiliar scenery around him left him confused. By the way, where am I? Holy crap, it's just a vast expanse of white snow. How am I supposed to know where I am? Around that same time, Japan Hunter Association. Golden sunlight shone on the skyscraper. Tokuo leaned back on the sofa, reassuring Makoto. There's no need to worry so much, Guildmaster Shinoda, the Guildmaster of the Future Guild. Shirosaki Masato is with them after all. Makoto crossed his arms and said seriously, the biggest concern right now is whether the Blood Tower Guild truly orchestrated all of this. We don't know much about them. Go quickly agreed, absolutely. Even high-level hunters who end up in their sights are as good as dead, and we have no way of gathering more information. He paused for a moment. Then he tossed a tablet onto the table. But our Midas Guild has found a few things. He began to explain and recount the events to the other two. The reason they're making such a big move this time is because of the presence of the multinational Global Hunter Guild Stafford. Tokuo's eyes widened, his eyebrows shooting up in surprise. Stafford? Even Makoto, sitting beside him, couldn't hide his curiosity. Why would a world-class guild like that be in a small place like Japan? And with the H-Guild of all groups? Go lowered his head, his voice dropping several octaves. It's hard to imagine what the scene inside that dungeon is like right now. However, 15 years ago, during the Great Cataclysm, only a single dungeon collapsed. He recounted the terrifying scene from that time, his voice trembling slightly. Back then, the golems that escaped were more terrifying than demons from hell. He paused for a moment before continuing. The one who sealed the Golem Snowy Mountain dungeon at that time was one of the most powerful priests in the world, Nishihara Tomoka, of Japan. Makoto rubbed his chin, agreeing. Right. If Hunter Nishihara hadn't sacrificed herself, then... Go looked directly at the other two and continued the serious discussion. The giant golem's heart was sealed within a hidden dungeon. To this day, it remains an object of fatal attraction to people all over the world, he explained. He meticulously detailed the operating principles of the other two guilds. Both guilds are the type to be completely unscrupulous to achieve their goals. I'm not surprised they teamed up to conquer Golem Snowy Mountain. Besides, Ares Hill, from the International Hunter Association, is Nishihara's daughter, isn't she? Makoto quickly chimed in. We're all well aware of that. Then, aside from the matter of the long dragon sword, Kalisha, she must also be planning to investigate the death of her mother, Hunter Nishihara. But Go refuted him. No one has ever officially confirmed Hunter Nishihara's death. This made the other man even more astonished. What are you talking about? A hunter who goes missing in a dungeon and whose body is never found is always declared deceased. Isn't that right? And you're telling me someone who's been missing for 15 years hasn't been declared dead? Go picked up the tablet, glanced at a list, and replied, there was a survivor that year. A hunter who returned from that dungeon about 5 years ago also claimed to have seen Hunter Nishihara. Tokuo's eyes widened in surprise as he asked, What? Is that really true? The man affirmed in a low voice. Because Stafford suppressed the news, it's difficult for us to know the details. But at the very least, this much is true. The interesting thing is that in that dungeon, there are countless... Suddenly, a young man burst through the door, shouting, Mr. Chairman, something's happened! Go turned his head and snapped, What is it? We're in the middle of an important meeting. The young man grabbed the remote and stammered, Right now! The dungeon break is... As soon as the TV turned on, the sound of a golem's roar filled the room. A reporter was at the scene. Hiding behind a wrecked car, he spoke breathlessly. As you can see, there is a dungeon break in progress. His voice grew more urgent amid the chaotic scene. Right now, at this very moment, it's happening right in the city center. The area is filled with panicked screams and the sound of collapsing structures. The moment Go saw it, he couldn't help but grit his teeth in anger. Those are golems from the Golem Snowy Mountain dungeon. That's impossible. Don't tell me the dungeon that was just conquered has collapsed. What the hell is going on? Meanwhile, somewhere else in the dungeon, a group was trying to push through a blizzard. Sarah looked at Takumi, who was clutching a piece of paper in his hand without saying a word. Finally, she spoke up. Is there a problem with the plan? This is the first time I've ever seen you injured, Kurosaki. Do you need me to heal you? He glanced at her, his voice challenging. If you're that curious, why don't you check for yourself? Takumi said, holding something out that made Sarah's eyes widen. This is it. The group stopped in front of a large gate as the man's calm voice announced, The hidden dungeon of the Snow Golem Mountain. Sarah, however, was mesmerized by the sight of the gate. She could finally collect the heart of the giant golem. Takumi boldly led the group across the treacherous suspension bridge connecting the two mountains. All the while, Satoru had been using his stealth ability, quietly observing every detail from a corner until the entire group had passed. Only then did he slowly start to move, tailing his target closely. Right at the other end of the bridge, leading to a mysterious cave, Takumi's group was now just a stone's throw away. They could get inside. This caused Satoru to gasp in silent amazement. Ah, so this is the hidden dungeon. The people following him also had their faces covered, carefully concealing their identities. After taking a few steps, they sensed something was off. One reached out a hand towards the barrier, gently probing it. Suddenly, a sense of unease bloomed within him, and he immediately reported, "Guildmaster, there's some kind of barrier here." Hearing this, the man slowly walked over. He lightly touched the barrier, thinking to himself, "Staffield." As expected of a world-class guild, their information is unbelievably reliable. Takumi's memories flashed back to the old days as he thought, "This place. 15 years ago, it was sealed by a great mage and the strongest hunter, Nishihara Tomoka. Moreover, it held something he had cherished and yearned to obtain his entire life. The giant golem's heart from the hidden dungeon. Just thinking about it." His eyes narrowed with emotion. He suddenly called out to everyone. Next, Takumi didn't forget to instruct them to carefully prepare to break the barrier. "Don't let your guard down and stay alert of your surroundings." Everyone obeyed, responding with a clear, "Understood." After giving his orders to the group, he turned to the woman and commanded, "Sarah, revert the settings of the long dragon sword." However, before Arita Sarah could even react, his eyes turned cold as he narrowed them and said, "Wait, it seems a little rat has been tailing us." These words only confused her more, leaving her standing there dumbfounded. Meanwhile, Satoru had heard every single word of his insult, which nearly made him jump out of his skin. He thought to himself, "What an idiot, who dares to use stealth to tail the blood tower?" His face had turned pale with fear. Clenching his teeth, he thought, "Senior Haruto, he's in big trouble." Without another word, Takumi charged aggressively toward the source of the sound, yelling, "You're pissing me off!" The Weeping Rabbit of Snow Golem Mountain lives near the hidden dungeon of the Snow Golem Mountain, level 31, a rabbit-like monster that is always hungry and aggressive. Defeating it will yield a magic stone. This made Haruto exclaim in surprise, "Huh? I didn't know there were other monsters in here besides golems." Then he saw it get punched. A new player had appeared and knocked it out with a single blow. Near the Weeping Rabbit, a red gemstone appeared. It was incredibly eye-catching. The snow golem walked over and gently picked up the stone. Then, for some reason, it suddenly ran quickly towards him, its face full of innocence and its eyes full of affection, as if it had a question that needed answering. Haruto knew just by looking. He patted its head and asked gently, "Are you asking me if you can eat that stone?" "Go ahead, little guy." After getting permission, the snow golem popped it in its mouth and chewed happily, making him let out a sly laugh. "After all, I've already copied it." "Come on." Haruto clutched the treasure in his hand and marveled, who would have thought the transfigured golem's core had this ability? Transfigured golem's core can create a golem by pouring mana into the core. Skill 1. Create a level 1 golem identical to the user's imagination. Skill 2. Can create level 1 transfigured golem armor. Skill 3. Can share scouting and reconnaissance abilities with the created golem. The higher the level, the farther the user can control the golem. The joy was so immense that his smile became distorted as he thought back to when he found out there were no skills he could absorb using copy and paste. I was a little disappointed, but this is an amazing item too. If the core can create one golem, what happens if I copy and paste it? Haruto's face lit up, a wide, toothy grin showing his unconcealed joy as he thought, "Now I can easily create a whole army of golems. This is awesome. It means I can go into dungeons on my own from now on." The golem looked at him, slightly bewildered. The snow golem can grow to level 10, can freely change its form, and shares its senses with its master. Furthermore, this also made Haruto wonder. It's only level 1. I wonder how big it'll get by level 10. If it gets too big, that'll be a problem. Something unexpected happened that made Haruto, who had been grinning from ear to ear, widen his eyes in shock. The snow golem seemed to have detected something unusual. It powerfully raised its fist and lunged forward. Satoru, who had just arrived, was suddenly attacked and screamed in pain, "Gah! Ow!" Just then his eyes shifted toward Satoru. His expression was one of complete shock as he yelled, "Satoru!" At that moment, Satoru, having been blindsided by the snow golem, was so scared that tears were streaming down his face. Just like that, Satoru looked at him as if he were his only lifeline. He leaped right onto Haruto, wailing and screaming, "Haruto-senpai, I thought I was a total goner!" After getting the information from him, the two of them immediately rushed over. Haruto couldn't hold back his anger and yelled, "Damn it, those bastards from the Blood Tower found the hidden dungeon already? Tisk!" In truth, he felt bad seeing Satoru suddenly get caught up in all this trouble. He couldn't help but blame himself, saying, "I'm sorry. I didn't think they'd be able to find you so easily." He had let his guard down, thinking it was a top-tier stealth skill, but Satoru immediately shook his head, refuting it. "No, not at all. I was in a different location at the time, so I was fine. But the person they found was probably a hunter from the Future Guild. The one he found and dealt with on the spot was someone else, and I managed to escape safely." At that moment, Haruto narrowed his eyes and thought to himself, Guildmaster Shirosaki. I figured he wasn't the type to make proper plans, but I didn't expect his intentions to align so perfectly with mine. After all, it was clear he couldn't let his guard down when it came to the Blood Tower Guild. As if remembering something important, Satoru revealed, "By the way, there was a girl among them," causing Haruto's eyes to widen in surprise as he exclaimed, "Huh? A girl?" Satoru confirmed decisively. Yes, it looked like she was concentrating mana into some jars and starting to do something. And then the dungeon was re-established. In that moment, I gripped my sword, but I was so scared and trembling that I didn't dare to rush in. Now I just feel so ashamed, he choked out. He said he thought about stopping them, but honestly, it was because he was just too scared. "I'm sorry." Seeing him so dejected with tears welling in his eyes, Haruto patted his head comfortingly and praised him. "It's okay. You did a great job." After sniffling for a moment, Satoru suddenly remembered an important detail and hurriedly recounted it. "Oh, right, that girl looked really familiar. I've seen her somewhere before." After he said that, his gaze turned a bit wary and curious as he asked, is it okay for that thing to keep following us like this?" Haruto knew full well what he was referring to and simply replied nonchalantly, "Don't worry, he's my subordinate." Hearing this, Satoru's eyes lit up with admiration. "Wait, so a golem is your henchman? Does that mean you can control all kinds of golems?" "Haruto-senpai, you're amazing!" Very quickly after that, they moved to a hiding spot where they could observe from a distance. Satoru kept reminding him, "The hidden dungeon is just across that bridge. But their people are hiding and guarding the area all over. If we make a reckless move, we'll get caught immediately." At this, he fell silent, and then Haruto suddenly made a proposal with a serious face. "Satoru, you go get Hunter Nanas and Guildmaster Shirosaki and bring them here." This left Satoru bewildered, and he immediately asked, "Huh? But that means you'll be here all alone, senpai. Besides, you know the enemy has that longsword, right?" However, Haruto just calmly patted the Snow Mountain Golem's head and replied nonchalantly, "You don't need to worry about me. I have a way to monitor their every move from right here." In the end, with no more arguments to make, he dejectedly agreed. "I understand. If you say so, Haruto-senpai." Before Satoru left, Haruto carefully handed him an item, instructing, "Take this too." This made Satoru ask inquisitively, "Is this a transformation golem's core?" At this point, Satoru looked as excited as a child. He couldn't help but shout, "Is it from this golem?" This startled it, making it glance over at him, just as expected. Haruto then gave him a few more important instructions. "From now on, it's your subordinate. You like it a lot, don't you? Don't be fooled by its looks. Its combat ability is pretty high, so it'll be quite useful." Satoru was so happy he was moved to tears, asking again in disbelief, "Haruto-senpai, are you really giving me something this valuable?" This made Haruto feel a bit helpless as he replied, "I guess so." He then swallowed the words he was about to say. "It's valuable, sure, but I have a whole bunch of them." Just like that, in an instant, Satoru seemed to be re-energized and enthusiastically ran off. He declared powerfully, "Thank you so much, Haruto-senpai. I promise I'll bring the others back as soon as I can." This display from him made Haruto let out a laugh of disbelief. He thought to himself, "He's a member of a major guild, but he's pretty naive, huh? It's probably because Hunter Nanas shoulders most of the responsibility. Time to get back to business." He had already secretly identified the right opportunity. Now, it was time to create a new subordinate. Putting his thoughts into action, he began using the transformation golem's core to create a new golem. During this critical process, Haruto observed intently, because he was planning that, "If it can create a golem based on my imagination, then I'll feed it some mana." Finally, after a period of waiting, the golem began to undergo a powerful transformation. Haruto remained completely focused on observing. A moment later, a system notification appeared. Transformation Golem Core Skill 3, able to share reconnaissance and scouting abilities with created golem. He couldn't believe his eyes. He stared in joyful astonishment, thinking to himself, "Wow, this thing is completely overpowered." With its new reconnaissance and scouting ability, the golem quickly flew to where Takumi was located. As for Haruto, his task was simply to focus and watch carefully, so as not to miss a single important detail. Through the transmitted image, he could vaguely make out a girl next to the man, and he realized it must be the girl Satoru had mentioned. What is she doing with the longsword Kalisha? Faced with this series of unusual actions, Haruto couldn't take his eyes off her for even a second, afraid he might miss something. Very soon after, Aritasara's action had just ended. She was still in a daze, her eyes wide in thought. On top of that, the system announced, Control plus Z cancelled. Durability of the longsword. Kalisha restored to its original state. After that, an information panel for the longsword appeared. A sword forged from the soul of the dragon Kalisha. Requires level 30, user's level adjusted, level 200. Will be automatically applied when combined with unique skill 2. Passive skill. Increases user's defense by 35%. Unique skill 1. Bloodlust. Absorbs 15% of the target's stamina, health, and mana of the target. Passive skill, unique skill. 2. Berserk. Automatically activates when the user's HP drops below 10%. All of the user's abilities and level are doubled, including the user's base level. Duration, 1 minute. Cooldown, 1 day. Just like that, a moment later, the durability was displayed as 6%, but that number quickly faded away, and significant fluctuations appeared. Yet in just an instant, that number became incredibly blurry before shooting straight up to 100, a remarkable record. Along with that came the system notification, Control plus Z, the durability of the longsword. Calicia has returned to its original state. Durability, 100%, an increase of 94%. Only now, after completing the restoration process, did Arita... Sarah finally collapsed from exhaustion, kneeling on the ground. Restoring a sword like that had taken too much of her strength, leaving her panting heavily. However, her reaction greatly pleased him. "Excellent," he exclaimed, his voice filled with praise. Takumi couldn't hide his joy, a cold smirk forming on his lips as he held the powerful sword. All right, durability is no longer an issue. Haruto, watching this scene through his scouting golem, couldn't help but stare in astonishment, muttering to himself, "Are you kidding me? The durability of the longsword Calicia has been fully restored. Can a skill like that really exist in this world?" Just then, a possibility flashed through Haruto's mind. Wait a minute! No! If that's true, then that girl, she's just like me, a possessor of the cursed gift. Glaring red text flickered continuously in the system window, slowly displaying the number 6. Then, it quickly changed to a cold, piercing red 100, signaling a transformation that would change the entire situation. After reaching 100, the system text immediately turned green, displaying the message, Control plus Z. The durability of the longsword Calicia has been returned to its original state. And the most special thing was that very comeback pushed the durability up to 100%, a fresh increase of over 94%, without any trouble. This change hit Haruto like a ton of bricks. His jaw dropped, so surprised that he started mumbling to himself, unable to believe it. I can't believe there's someone else out there shouldering the same curse as me. He wasn't sure how he felt at that moment. On the other side, Nanase was growing weak from the cold and fatigue. Her pale face and ragged breathing sparked a few thoughts in his mind. Considering the longsword's durability had been reset, and does that mean she has the power to return anything to its original state? In other words, it's a power that's the opposite of mine. But he quickly thought, if that's the case, I'll copy that skill. The snowstorm was getting stronger, and Haruto was growing tired as well. He couldn't hesitate any longer, but he was still uncertain. Can I even copy someone else's skill? I have to find out. But what if he couldn't? The sky was still a white blur of snow. The only thing he could see now was the striking red of Nanase's clothes. With immense determination, Haruto told himself that he had to make her his ally. Both of them were exhausted, but that bastard Takumi wasn't going to let them rest for long. With undisguised killing intent, the man growled, "It's finally time for me to destroy the barrier of the hidden dungeon." As he finished speaking, he thrust his sword violently into the hidden dungeon's barrier. It was like a seal. The scene before them was strangely horrifying. In the flesh-cutting cold, there was only a blazing red area, like a barrier that Takumi had created. It was like a private world that no one could touch. That barrier writhed like a centipede, its parts twisting around each other like chains to form a tight link. It would be difficult for someone to get in, let alone think of getting out. Its terrifying power made Nanase feel a wave of searing heat hit her straight in the face. She cried out in pain and quickly shielded her face with her hands. Over on Haruto's side, he also sensed this terrifying power. The only source of light reflected in his deep eyes was from Takumi. He realized with a shock that it was the barrier of the hidden dungeon. Ignoring the two dazed people, Takumi arrogantly held up a key, unable to hide his smile. He muttered, "If it weren't for the information from Starfire, we'd never have been able to break the barrier with this key." He slammed the sword into the center of the barrier, speaking as if he were boasting about his achievement. It was created 15 years ago by the great mage hunter, Nishihara. That's why you need this sword to even hope to break the seal. Nanase asked tensely, "What do you mean by that?" Takumi slowly turned his head. He smiled savagely and said calmly, "The original owner of the sword was Nishihara's husband, Frederick Hill. He went missing in this dungeon 15 years ago. The hunter Nishihara set up a barrier that could only be broken by her husband's sword, so that no one else could ever get inside." They were all stunned by this information. Really? Nanase and perhaps Haruto as well were both thinking, the owner of the longsword was the world's #1 swordsman Frederick Hill, and his wife was the great mage Nishihara Tomoka, and their daughter is Miss Ares? So that's why she was so fixated on that sword. Takumi couldn't care less what the two of them were thinking. He was in a rush to break the barrier of this seal. He plunged the sword deep into the barrier and yelled, "All right, model, let's break the seal." As he finished speaking, the man shouted, "Longsword Calicia, release your power!" while channeling all his energy to open the barrier. The barrier immediately unleashed a suffocating magical force. Earth and rock were swept up by that immense power, shattering into pieces. That deathly red glow felt like a sea of blood, drowning all the faint life around it. The resilient birds that had withstood the freezing blizzard were now incinerated by that scorching red glow. Both Haruto and Nanas, without a word, took cover behind a large nearby boulder. Bracing themselves with its weight, Haruto squinted to avoid being blinded by the source of that light. He cursed helplessly in his mind. A level 1 golem can't handle this onslaught. If Longsword Kalish's durability hadn't been restored, it wouldn't be able to unleash this much power. But he didn't have much time to think. The barrier was open, and his shield rattled violently like chains, struggling to hold on against that immense power. The scene looked like a torn comic book page. The other side of the barrier was like another world, pitch black and deep, with no visible path. The towering Takumi, unable to see what lay beyond, suddenly seemed unusually small before this scene. But being the arrogant and smug man he was, he just smirked and mumbled to himself. I can't believe the entrance to the hidden dungeon is a spatial projection. She must have been through a lot. Pfft, not that I care. After 15 years, the hidden dungeon of Golem Mountain has returned. Then he shouted, part order, part morale boost. Everyone, it's time to find the heart of the giant golem. With that, they all silently stepped into the dimension. That dazzling portal gradually vanished, signaling a journey with little chance of survival. Haruto anxiously bit his lip, unsure of what to do. Should I follow them? He thought impatiently, cursing Satoru in his head. Satoru, how much longer are you going to make me wait? Meanwhile, in an S-rank dungeon in southern Italy, the scene was bone-chilling. The thick, metallic stench of blood hung in the air. Blood, corpses, and the cold, dark dungeon created an atmosphere of death. It was sickening. The only surviving soldier, barely breathing, used his last ounce of strength to grit out, "Just kill me. Why did you have to take the others' lives?" His opponent gave a light flick of his finger, every gesture dripping with indifference and inhumanity, and replied in a flat tone. "If I did that, I'd be a murderer," he said, his voice feigning innocence. "But if the entire squad is wiped out, then people will just think it was a dungeon accident." With that snap, the poor soldier's life came to an end. The carnage was so horrific one could only turn away and retch. And that inhumane system displayed another one of its cold, pre-programmed messages. Canchin A. When the skill user dies, the skill will be transferred to the next capable user. In short, this is a type of ability that steals the lives of others to become stronger. And this man had absorbed all the power of those unfortunate soldiers. He grunted, struggling to absorb the immense flow of power. Instantly, a glowing red mark on his neck became more distinct. The man radiated a sickening killing intent, his face slowly warping into something inhuman, all as if it were pre-programmed. Control A. All selected. Those unfortunate soldiers were like obsolete inventory, packaged up with a single Cancel X, the command cutting all selected targets. They all vanished as if they'd never been there, as if they had never existed. In that moment, human life was pitifully cheap. A rhythmic sound broke the silence. A bizarre-looking blonde demoness clapped rhythmically, her voice icy. "It seems your Canchin A skill has improved, hasn't it? Compared to erasing them one by one, the scale is much larger now." The man replied emotionlessly. "The annoying part is that I have to take the target's life to prevent the curse from ending me, but what really pisses me off is that no matter how many times I use the skill, it doesn't evolve. It's driving me crazy." The demoness stepped closer, chiding him. "Haven't I told you before? Unless you reach the target, the skill won't change. The only skill that can be acquired and upgraded without killing an enemy," she paused for emphasis, "is Canchin C." The mysterious man said, frustrated. "We've been searching for that person for 15 years and haven't found a single trace. Does Canchin C even exist?" he asked hopelessly. The blonde demoness gave a cunning smile and explained, "It's a little different from how it is in our dimension, but I'm certain someone in this world possesses it as well. And Canchin FM is for finding people with Canchin skills, right?" The man calmed down, pulling up his hood and murmuring, "Now that you mention it, what about Canchin Z?" The other replied, "Based on the intel we've gathered, currently, the Blood Tower Guild is reporting that the sealed barrier created by the hunter Nishihara has been broken. Both of those guys are linked to Canchin Z, our primary target. But remember to secure the heart of the giant golem. It's an item that allows those with cursed skills to use their powers to their maximum potential." "Understood." The other replied, and the two of them vanished into thin air. Meanwhile, inside the dimension, the Kurosaki Guild was cautiously exploring. After a while, Masato started his usual grumbling. "What the hell?" he yelled. "We rushed all the way here, just to find a snowy wasteland like this? There aren't even any signs of a fight. Did we take a wrong turn?" he asked suspiciously. The sharp-witted Haruto replied, "They haven't been gone long." "Your intuition is really reliable," another member said as the others started analyzing the situation. "It looks like there are no monsters here. Since there's only one path, we should be able to catch up to them soon." They started picking up the pace. Nanas, while running, asked Ares, "Do you have any idea where they're getting their information?" Ares didn't answer right away. She hesitated. "This is just my personal guess. but their backer is probably Staffield. Her expression turned grim. Nanas looked like she'd been struck, shouting, "Staffield!" This unintentionally made everyone turn back in alarm, including Haruto. She asked in disbelief, "The #1 international guild in the world? Why would they team up with the Blood Tower?" Ares spoke with difficulty. "I think the reason might be my mother." Haruto overheard everything and had a realization. So this was the root source of the information the Blood Tower had. Gripping his longsword, he started piecing the facts together and realized with alarm that they had planned everything out. He turned anxiously. So their target is, Ares thought to herself, maybe not. But if it's true... He was completely confused. Haruto concluded seriously, "Their target isn't the transforming golem key, it's you, Ares. Masato started urging them on. "Come on, it'll be faster if we just grab one of those Blood Tower members and force them to talk." He was quick on the uptake, too. He realized, if Staffield is backing them, then that guy Kai being able to use Shadow Step, and everything else. He gritted his teeth and muttered, "We just have to catch him and hear it from his own mouth." Everyone picked up the pace, including the clumsy golem who now roared, "Wait for me!" as it ran with a loud rumble. Masato approached Satoru and asked curiously, "I've been noticing for a while, what's that thing you're leading around?" Satoru replied cheerfully, "It's a subordinate that Senior Haruto gave me." Nanas asked curiously, "Why did you give Satoru such a valuable item?" Haruto, caught off guard, stammered, "Huh? Well, because it's valuable, that's why I gave it to him. Giving him a bodyguard is the only way to be sure he's safe." He didn't notice a faint smile appear on Nanas's lips. Suddenly, a source of light appeared beneath his feet, something unexpected. Haruto was taken by surprise, not understanding what was happening. The surprise had arrived right under their feet. A golden magic circle had opened, utterly tempting, and it was a trap. In an instant, everyone vanished in that blinding yellow light, except for Haruto. Haruto reacted immediately. He shouted, "Satoru, Nanas!" and quickly dashed past even Sano. With a worried expression, Haruto called out his little brother's name, "Satoru!" All four of them stepped into the magic circle where the other three had disappeared. A golden light flashed, enveloping Haruto. To his astonishment, in the blink of an eye, they landed right in another magic circle. He crouched, touching the ground with a soft thud. Nanas immediately stood up and shouted, "Satoru!" Haruto also looked around, yelling, "President Shirosaki!" He raised his sword defensively, glanced behind him, and asked loudly, "What is going on? We were supposed to be right behind them. How did we suddenly lose them?" Suddenly, a loud roar echoed. Haruto immediately reacted and looked over. A massive monster appeared before him, its eyes fierce and its sharp teeth bared as it charged straight at them. Standing before the monster's wide-open mouth, Haruto was terrified, screaming internally, "Damn it! Where did that thing come from?" While he was still stunned, Nanas had already charged forward resolutely with her long spear. She shouted the name of her skill, "Vudao!" With a single slash, the monster's head and body were severed. Its entire body fell to the ground with a thud. Dust flew up, and blood gushed out endlessly. Haruto, still shaken, spoke up, "Why is there a dinosaur-shaped monster in the Golem Snowy Mountains?" Of all places, Aris crouched down to examine the monster's corpse and replied to him, "This place. It feels like we're in a completely different world." She looked at everyone, her gaze resolute. "It's definitely a multidimensional dungeon." The whole group was shocked, shouting in unison, "A multidimensional dungeon?" Above the rock formations were strange birds, flying in the blue sky while below the tall trees. Haruto's group was stunned by the sight before them. He blurted out, "What is this?" while Nanas refuted Ares. "That's impossible. I heard all the multidimensional dungeons were purged during the Great Calamity 15 years ago." Ares answered her, "That's right. My mother sealed all of them. However, it seems that for some reason they've opened up again." She continued to explain, "The hidden dungeon of the Golem Snowy Mountains." It was also one of the sealed dungeons. The magic circles placed within these dungeons, are what allow them to connect to countless other dimensions. Picturing the scene of terrifying monsters being summoned, Ares came to a conclusion. When the circle is activated, a portal to another world opens. It's also possible we've been transported to an extremely dangerous dungeon. After hearing this, Nanas, as if she understood, stroked her chin and spoke. "So that's why Hunter Nishihara set up a protective barrier around this place." Ares added, "My mother also hypothesized that the Great Calamity years ago was actually a rampage from a multidimensional dungeon." Haruto's face was filled with worry. "If that's the case, then where were Satoru and President Shirosaki transported to?" She answered him, "They must have been sent to a different dimension." She also spoke seriously to the three of them. "If we clear this dungeon, we'll be able to get our hands on the heart of the giant golem. It would be a blessing in disguise." Hearing this, he gripped the hilt of his sword with both hands. "If that's the case, let's get moving quickly." Haruto tensed up and looked ahead. Right before them, many dinosaur-like monsters were breaking through the trees and advancing. He broke into a sweat. "Damn. This isn't going to be easy." Nanas takes a breath, assuming a fighting stance. The scene cuts to the city center, where towering buildings are in ruins, sinking in smoke and sky-high flames. A stone golem is rampaging, chasing and attacking civilians. All they can do is scream and run as the hunters team up, each landing a blow to successfully destroy it. But its core remained. The golem quickly regenerated. One of the hunters shouted, "Damn it! We'll never destroy the core like this!" While the hunter beside him turned and yelled for help. "Mages, we need a wide-area attack over here!" A young mage-class hunter looked over, his expression grave, and replied, "I can't right now." "We can't absorb mana as easily out here as we can in a dungeon," the young man added quietly. "Besides, I'm busy just trying to stay alive." "How am I supposed to help you?" Another hunter yelled as he shattered the golem's arm. "Damn it! When we need that mana battery, he's nowhere to be seen." A bald hunter nearby, also attacking fiercely, muttered, "Never thought we'd actually need that useless piece of junk." Suddenly, a stone golem attacked from behind him. It let out a roar, its hand about to snatch the bald hunter. The mage saw it and screamed a warning, "Hey, behind you!" Suddenly, a long flash of light from a sword slashed past. It was Lucas. Appearing from nowhere, he sliced the attacking golem in two. He landed swiftly on the ground as the stone fragments of its body rained down behind him. The mage started to say, "Ah, thank you so much, huh?" He stopped mid-sentence, surprised as he saw the man's face. "A foreigner?" Lucas casually brushed his hair back and replied with a bright smile, "I'm here on business, but I couldn't just stand back and watch." The bald hunter walked up. "We were in a real tight spot. Thanks for lending a hand." The young mage praised him. "Wow, your Japanese is amazing, and you're so stylish, too." He asked them curiously, "By the way, what was that mana battery thing you were all talking about earlier?" "It just got me curious." The bald hunter gave a scornful laugh and waved his hand dismissively. "Ah, it's no big deal. He's just some low-level hunter. He can fight a little, but his only skill is infinite mana regeneration. His sole purpose is to act as a mana battery for his teammates." Lucas stepped closer to him urgently. "Where can I meet this guy?" The bald hunter replied, "I used to run into him all the time, but I haven't seen him in a long while, so I have no idea where he is now. He just popped into my head, so I mentioned him, that's all." Hearing this, he thought to himself, "An infinite mana regeneration skill? I've never heard of a skill like that before. Could he be the one?" Suddenly, a voice rang out, "Oh, so you've finally arrived." It made Lucas turn and look up. Two figures had appeared atop a tall building. It was Go and Shinoda. Lucas stared up, silently identifying them. The Guildmaster of Midas, Go, and the Guildmaster of Dainu, Shinoda. Lucas couldn't help but feel a surge of anticipation. It seemed he was about to witness something spectacular. A large horde of stone golems was on the move, with the last and largest one standing on a high floor. The two of them looked down at the golems below. Makoto exclaimed, "A golem lord, there's no doubt." The golem snowy mountain. A breakout really did happen. Then he turned to the man beside him. "They're the perfect opponents for you, aren't they? Guildmaster Takeuchi, I'll provide support." Go angrily gritted his teeth and cursed, "Shirosaki, that damn dungeon fiend, what the hell is he doing in there?" With that, he leaped down, shouting back at Makoto, "Go tell the chairman, my reward had better be something from the association's S-rank equipment vault." Instantly, Go activated his stone armor ability. His body was quickly encased in rock as he plummeted powerfully to the ground. The concrete pavement shattered, sending dust and debris flying. Go's body had completely transformed, a layer of tough rock covering him like a solid suit of armor. A golem, not knowing its own place, charged at Go. He was filled with contempt. "We may both be made of stone, but you and I are on completely different levels." He instantly rushed them. One golem after another shattered to pieces. None could withstand a single blow from him. The nearby buildings shook from the tremors of the fight. Away from Go's battle with the golems, a hand began to gather power. Streams of light appeared around Shinoda Makoto as he raised his arm, casting a spell. A multicolored ring of light quickly formed, spinning around him. He aimed his hand forward, and the stream of magical power shot out at the speed of light. It shot straight past Go's head. He grunted, "That old geezer. So much for support. Looks like he just wants to watch the show. Guess his help has its limits, huh?" The final giant stone golem let out a roar. It immediately charged at Go, throwing a high-speed punch right at him. Without hesitation, Go took a stance, preparing to counter with his own fist. His voice dripped with arrogance. "If this is a battle of strength, then my victory is guaranteed." Go then used his power to enhance his arm, which was instantly covered in dense, sharp spikes. The two fists, one massive and one small, collided. The immense force of the impact sent continuous shockwaves radiating outward. Cracks spiderwebbed across the golem's arm, spreading up to its shoulder and throughout its entire body. Unable to withstand his power, half of its body exploded into small pieces of rock. Among the falling debris was the golem's glossy red core. Go quickly snatched it. The stone covering his face began to recede. A sinister smile spread across his face. "I won't let that old geezer get the last laugh." As soon as he finished his thought, he mercilessly crushed the core in his hand. A notification immediately popped up. Dungeon boss has been defeated. Dungeon purge complete. Nearby, Makoto closed his eyes and let out a sigh of relief. The hunters near Go erupted in cheers, their morale soaring as they celebrated the victory. Just then, the Cantron plus F ability card displayed a notification. Cantron plus F. Target is not a Cantron skill holder. It turned out that Lucas was the one who possessed the Cantron plus F ability card. He thought to himself, Japan's top hunter and the Midas Guildmaster. He took care of a monster breakout in just 10 minutes. A glimmer of hope sparked within Lucas. Even though he's not the Cantron holder, I still gathered some good intel. He immediately jotted it down in his notebook. After closing the book, he thought, that reminds me. Cantron Zed is probably still in the dungeon, right? I doubt she'll die in there. Ha! But he had no idea that Arita Sarah, the user of the Cancel Z ability, was already severely injured. A large hole had appeared in her abdomen. Rewind to 20 minutes earlier. Just then, a horde of ferocious, growling zombies appeared. Their bloodshot red eyes gleamed in the darkness as they swarmed out of the city gate. Takumi stood before his group, watching them. He calmly spoke. A horde of vampires, huh? Raising his longsword, he announced, From this point on, we're completely in the dark, so all we can do is rely on luck. Then with a loud yell, he unleashed a blazing red sword strike toward this dungeon. It didn't seem too difficult. The zombies hit by the sword's energy could only let out a gasp as their bodies began to disintegrate. The longsword's power continued to spread through the entire horde. They were all annihilated in the blink of an eye. A moment later, the smoke gradually cleared, revealing nothing but a gray landscape of zombies lying lifelessly on the ground. A notification appeared. Dungeon purged. Teleporting to the boss's location. Heart of the giant golem. Upon hearing this, Takumi smiled dangerously. They were all mentally prepared. Before long, the group was teleported to a giant stone door. Above the door were strange characters. One of the masked men spoke up. So we've finally reached the hidden dungeon's boss. Takumi held up the golden metal key. It's time for this key to prove its worth. Without another word or any wasted movement, he plunged the key straight into the door. The large, heavy door swung open. They entered one by one. As soon as they stepped inside, they all saw rows of massive stone statues. Their eyes glowed with a strange aquamarine color. One of the group couldn't help but exclaim, What is this? There's nothing in here but a bunch of stone statues. A masked man, scraping his sword against the wall, asked, Maybe we're too early. The boss hasn't shown up yet, has it? Sarah, her face covered in sweat, let out a quiet breath. What nonsense is he spouting, she thought. Ever since I walked in, I've felt this indescribable pressure crushing my body. She looked at the others, wondering, Can't the rest of you feel it? Maybe it's because they're hunters, so they're used to it. The masked man continued, That must be it. In that case, we just need to beat the monster and grab the reward items. He was completely unaware of something lunging at him from above. Just as the words left his mouth, a giant stone hand slammed down, crushing him to the ground. The stone floor shattered, sending dust flying high into the air. When the hand lifted, blood dripped endlessly from beneath it. The masked man lay motionless. It was the hand of one of the stone statues. Its eyes were now glowing red. The imprint of its hand was clearly visible on the ground, along with the unlucky masked man. Another masked man witnessed this and couldn't help but scream in fear, Holy crap, the statue is the boss? Wait a minute! Does that mean the other statues will... Immediately, the other statues began to move, quickly surrounding them. Sarah was completely terrified, her whole body trembling uncontrollably as she clamped a hand over her mouth. She tried not to make a sound. It turned out the masked man who was crushed earlier was still alive. He struggled, coughing up a mouthful of blood. Cough! Seeing Sarah's terrified expression, Takumi felt confused and thought to himself, What the hell are you doing? You've seen people die right in front of your eyes countless times before. And yet immediately after that, he shouted at her, Sarah, snap out of it! Heal him now while he's still breathing! Startled by his voice, she let out a small gasp. Ah! With tears welling in her eyes, she gradually regained her composure. Sarah immediately rushed over to the masked man who was still barely breathing. However, as soon as she took out the energy storage flask, streams of mana began to pour out of it. In Sarah's hands, the mana flask was already empty. She stared at them. She was completely shocked. Huh? The flask is out of mana? No. Is the mana leaking out? It was as if something was sucking the mana out of both flasks. She was utterly bewildered. Are you kidding me? Even a top-tier mage couldn't break the seal on this mana flask. What in the world is happening? All the mana was flowing in one direction. Sarah, sweating, looked nervously toward where the streams of mana were heading. Where is it all going? A statue raised its sword high and swung down at the group. One man, unable to run, prepared to accept his fate. Another crawled away, screaming in terror. Takumi was swinging his sword, fighting like a madman. Seeing this, he roared, Don't just stand there terrified, fight back. No matter how big they are, they're still just golems. As he spoke, he swung his sword again, striking the front of a statue. Stone fragments flew from its torso. Then, Takumi spoke to one of the masked men. "It's a high-level monster, so use the mines." The man replied, "I already tried, but neither my stealth skill nor the mines will activate." Suddenly, a dark shadow lunged straight at the masked man. He felt a chill run down his spine. The stone statue's sword instantly struck him. Takumi leaped back, cursing loudly, "Damn it!" But when he looked in another direction, he couldn't help but shudder in horror. Another masked man was caught tightly in a statue's grasp. It squeezed with immense force, causing his blood to spray out relentlessly. Then, it threw them down one by one in front of Takumi, leaving him speechless. He gritted his teeth in fury. "Are you mocking me? If every last one of them dies," Takumi growled, his eyes filled with rage. "Our effectiveness! I'm about to lose my mind!" He looked so small standing before the stone statues as he screamed, "You damn piles of pebbles! Being that big is your disadvantage." Raising the sword in his hand high, Takumi roared, "Longsword Calicia, release your power!" Suddenly, a red notification flashed. User does not have enough mana to release the sword energy of Longsword Calicia. He couldn't believe his eyes, his voice ringing with anger. "Ha! I'm over level 300! What do you mean, not enough mana?" The statue was already swinging down. He could only blink and look up, muttering a curse. "Damn it!" The massive stone sword descended with extreme force, slamming into the ground. Instantly, a fissure cracked open, sending shards of rock flying upwards, oblivious to the situation over there. Sarah walked along the stone steps, following the trail of draining mana. She finally arrived, relieved to see that all the mana was converging here. Before her was a stone pedestal, and on top of it, something was continuously absorbing the surrounding mana. Curious, Sarah reached out her hand. "What is this?" The moment Sarah touched the icebox, it reacted instantly, vibrating as a massive red stone appeared before her, making her gasp in surprise. "No way! This is a giant golem's heart! But why is it absorbing mana instead of regenerating?" The heart, detecting an intruder, began to pulsate violently. Suddenly sensing danger, Sarah broke into a cold sweat. "This is bad." Without a moment's hesitation, she immediately turned to run from the giant golem's heart. But it was too late. It fired a beam of red energy straight at Sarah. The energy blast pierced through her side, and blood instantly gushed out as she fell from the high steps, tumbling down. Blood poured from her mouth. Nearby, a statue spotted Sarah lying on the ground. Its stone sword arm rose high, its two eyes glowing red. As it swung down to strike her, black shadows suddenly emerged from Sarah's own shadow. It was Takumi. He blocked the statue's descending sword just in time. The immense weight of the blade forced Takumi to spit out a mouthful of blood as he took out a small vial with one hand. A notification panel appeared. High-grade healing potion, Hunter's Association. When used, it restores 80% of HP and MP, and optionally increases the user's damage resistance. In an emergency, it can be applied to an affected area to preserve its condition. Takumi used it directly on the unconscious Sarah. Once done, he knelt and hoisted her onto his shoulder. A sudden notification appeared. The giant golem's heart has awakened and is initiating a boss battle. Takumi's jaw dropped. "Huh? That thing is..." Looking ahead, he saw the stone door slowly closing. An uneasy feeling washed over him. "Damn it! The door is closing? I have to use Shadow Step to get out of here now!" Black smoke began to swirl around Takumi's feet, but a red notification flashed. Warning, user does not have sufficient mana to execute Shadow Step. He roared in despair. "Are you kidding me? Where did all my mana go?" In this critical situation, Takumi had to sprint with all his might. But by the time he was just a short distance from the door, it had almost completely shut, leaving only a tiny gap, enough for one person to pass. He screamed internally. "Damn it! At this rate, neither of us will make it out." Ignoring his own bleeding wound, Takumi lifted Sarah high. With his last ounce of strength, he threw her straight through the stone door. Sarah flew out and landed sprawled on the ground. She struggled to get up, her whole body trembling, and managed to say, "Why?" Takumi looked at Sarah with a confident smile. "As long as you're alive, you can restore everything back to its original state, right?" The door slammed shut in front of her. Behind him, a statue was charging. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she forced out a curse. "Are you stupid? I'm not a hunter. I can't absorb mana. How am I supposed to re-establish anything?" Sarah fainted, her mind in a haze. She blamed herself. "I should never have come here. If I'm going to die in this place, what about my parents?" Suddenly, she felt a change in her body, something warm. "This is mana." Sarah slowly opened her eyes. Before her was Haruto, but her vision was so hazy she couldn't tell who it was. She could only see a blurry figure. "Who are you?" Haruto, seeing her eyes open, called out, "Are you okay?" Sarah looked at him and thought, "Is this the person who shared their mana with Hunter Nana?" Haruto was healing Sarah, and she could feel her entire body being filled with mana. "If I had this much mana..." Haruto focused on transferring mana to her, saying, "If you have enough mana, you can re-establish your own body, right?" Sarah was surprised that Haruto knew what she was thinking. "How does he know about my skill?" Just then, a loud voice boomed out. Is this some kind of joke? So we chased all this way to get here. And now you're telling me we can't open the door? Ares calmly walked to the door and told everyone, as long as a hunter is fighting inside, outsiders can't open the door. We could use a key to force it open. However, I'm sure none of you have forgotten that there's only one key. Masato, the guildmaster of the future guild, cursed angrily and said, damn it all. If we had known, we would have defeated that revived, mutated golem before coming here. Speaking of which, he turned and looked down at Sarah, who had now woken up. Who's this? She appears to be a high-rank healer from the Blood Tower Guild, Ares told him. She was critically injured, but thanks to Hunter Haruto's mana, she's fully recovered. We'll need to investigate further when we get back. I've restrained her with some hunter equipment. Hearing this didn't calm Masato down. It made him even angrier. That's assuming we can even get out of here, he barked. If we don't clear this dungeon, we'll be trapped in here forever. Isn't that right? Ares didn't want to make Masato even more furious, but he had to tell the truth. That's highly likely. Masato was so enraged he didn't even bother to curse anymore, just stood in a corner muttering, so, this is why so many people have gone missing in this dungeon. Seeing him like that, Haruto felt helpless. He heard him, but he was also worried, trying to figure out what to do. Should he show them the key he created with his skill? Item warehouse open. Current items? Giant spider silk times 4, Kalisha's longsword times 11, king bear claws times 4, transformed golem core times 15, key to unlock the heart times 2. I guess I could just say I found it somewhere, right? He then took the key out from his item warehouse. Just then, Ares walked over to the door, touching it and sensing that this was the door her mother had sealed. I'm sure there's something in there. Suddenly, the door emitted an unusual green light, and lines of text appeared on it. The same text also appeared on Ares' cloak. Everyone was surprised to see this. Haruto ran to her first and asked, Ares, how did you open the door? Your cloak is also glowing with the same pattern as the door. Ares lifted her cloak slightly and told him, this cloak originally belonged to my mother. It was probably made to resonate with the door. Hearing this, Haruto rejoiced internally. So Ares really is the key to this hidden dungeon. I'll have to carefully investigate this multi-dimensional dungeon later. Since Masato arrived late, he didn't understand what they were talking about. He then added, it looks like an automatic door. Suddenly, an unexpected energy made everyone uncomfortable. Even the Snow Mountain golem that accompanied them could feel it. It said, what's with the pressure in this room? Nanas came forward and warned everyone, everyone, get into a defensive stance. Something inside is draining our mana, Haruto asked Sarah, who was standing nearby. Sarah, is this the thing you were talking about earlier? She answered worriedly. Yes. The heart of the giant golem absorbs mana from everything around it, then uses that mana to regenerate its own. Hearing this, Haruto was surprised. It absorbs mana? If that's the case, then what should I do? While he was lost in thought, Sarah grabbed his hand and said with concern, get out of here immediately. No matter how high a hunter's level is, if they don't have mana, they'll... Just then, Haruto noticed something. What's that? In front of Haruto now was a group of giant beasts. He exclaimed, what the hell are these giants? Before he could get his bearings, Nanas came up to him and spoke. Hunter Sano, may I have some mana? Haruto then opened his item warehouse. He thought to himself, all right. Then he said with determination, let me show you the power of a walking, talking mana potion. At that moment, the system began to activate. Control plus C, copying the user's mana. Control plus V, pasting the copied mana, multiplied by N. Control plus V, pasting to the limit. The surrounding area was instantly flooded with mana. Witnessing this, Sarah's jaw dropped. What is this? The entire dungeon is covered in mana, even while it's being absorbed so quickly. She then looked at Haruto with astonishment. This person, Hunter Sano. If I combine my skill with his, I might be able to help my parents return to normal. Nanas charged towards the beast, saying, we have no shortage of mana. This is more than enough to take down these stone statues. She swung her scythe, and one of the creatures was instantly cut in two. Masato summoned his power and said confidently, as long as we have enough mana, you guys are just a bunch of useless rocks. He struck down with a mystic thunder pike, and the ground around a group of stone statues immediately collapsed. Masato said with delight, a whole group, huh? Perfect. I've been going crazy with frustration this whole time in this dungeon. Now I can take it all out on you lumps of stone. Masato's power was so immense that it covered a vast area of the dungeon. One after another, the stone statues were shattered. Someone called out loudly, he's over here! Sarah looked around, following the voice. She saw an injured man leaning against a corner wall, still breathing. He had a wound in his stomach and was missing an arm. Sarah thought from a distance, if I use my skill now... Suddenly, she noticed something unusual. Kalisia's longsword. Haruto had already approached the man. He stood there pensively for a moment, then picked up the longsword to observe it, thinking to himself, finally got it back. I knew it. The durability has been reset. This girl must be a cursed skill holder. I'm going to copy that skill. With that thought, he glanced over at Sarah, which startled her. But first, I have to test this. He touched Takumi's head. Control plus C. Copying target's true shadow clone skill. Copy failed because the target's level is higher than the user's. Haruto thought to himself, I wasn't wrong. Even with the level boost from the longsword, my level still isn't high enough. The target holds intense hostility towards you. In this situation, you have two options to acquire the skill. Option 1, eliminate the target and absorb the skill. Option 2, forcibly absorb the skill. This can only be performed when the target's HP is below 15%. This option will render the target unable to use the skill. Haruto was a bit surprised by this. Huh? If the target considers me an enemy, I just have to kill them to take their skill? If so, then... No, wait. No matter how I look at it, his HP is already below 15%, so I can absorb it right away without killing him. Forcible absorption, huh? For defensive purposes, I can see myself using this move a lot in the future. Masato walked over to Sarah and asked, You're a healer, right? Go heal him, but just enough so he doesn't die on us. Sarah activated her healing ability on Takumi. Masato stood by and said, We have a lot of questions for him, so it'll be a pain if he escapes. Sarah turned back to look at Haruto. He nodded, telling her to just heal the guy. Sarah then began the healing process. Takumi's arm grew back in an instant. Haruto was stunned, thinking to himself, his severed arm, it grew back immediately? This skill is on par with my body replication ability. Takumi finally came to. Sarah asked him, Hey, what are you laughing at? Takumi looked up at her and said, See? Neither of you are dead. Sarah saw that Takumi was not only awake, but was already talking like that. Whatever, I'm done. The guy was then cuffed by Nanase. She said, You'd better not try anything funny. The only reason you're alive is because of Guildmaster Shirosaki, not me. The guy ignored her, acting all high and mighty, and even retorted, If we make it out of here alive, that's exactly what I should be doing, isn't it? Then he looked around and said, This dungeon is just getting started. With that, Takumi tried to run. Seeing this, Nanase swung her sword. Just then, Satoru appeared out of nowhere and shouted, Sis, he's being chased by the light from the stone on the gate. The Snow Mountain Golem appeared, blocking the light. Let's go back 30 minutes, to Satoru in the multi-dimensional skeleton dungeon. Masato was using black lightning to strike the stone statues in the dungeon. The statues shattered from the attack, their pieces falling to the ground. The Snow Mountain Golem, who was with Satoru, excitedly ran over to the spot. Satoru was surprised. You want to eat the magic stones? Masato saw this and turned back, saying, You can have them all. These stones aren't worth much anyway. Hearing that, the Snow Mountain Golem dove in and started eating the magic stones one by one. Its body began to change. Snow Mountain Golem, level 2, 25%. Can level up to 10. Can flexibly change shape, level 2. Can share senses with user, level 2. Satoru saw this and, delighted, came over to pat its head. Oh, my little minion, you leveled up. As he touched the Snow Mountain Golem's body, rock suddenly spread from it onto Satoru's body. He shouted in surprise, Minion, what is this? Back in the present, Satoru's body was now covered by the Snow Mountain Golem, protecting him from the attacks. Haruto witnessed this, his eyes wide in disbelief. That little errand boy, he fused with Satoru? It leveled up in such a short time? Masato thought to himself, no matter how you look at it, this scene is exactly like Guildmaster Midas's stone armor technique. So that's how the evolving Golem core levels up. I'll have to study it more carefully when I get back. Masato created a protective barrier to shield himself from the dungeon's attacks. Suddenly, an attack strong enough to graze his shoulder got through, making Masato a bit uneasy. Eras, also on the defensive, warned Masato, Guildmaster of Future, be careful. These attacks are all made of pure mana. They're highly concentrated mana and sharp beams of light that can't be blocked by a magic shield. Nanase stepped forward and told everyone, On the contrary. Because of that, the best method is to counter with physical attacks. She then unleashed her Dance of the Blade, and surprisingly the attack actually blocked the incoming assault. Haruto looked over at Satoru thinking, It's just as Hunter Nanase said. Because the mana is so dense we can use our swords and regular shields to block the attacks. Over with Satoru, he was worried about the golem protecting him. Minion, are you okay? That's why Satoru's minion was able to successfully block the attack. Haruto still felt that something was wrong. But if we just keep defending, we'll never be able to advance. Because I can generate infinite mana, the giant golem's heart will be able to attack relentlessly. We need to get close enough to destroy it or we'll all die. I have to think of something. That's it! Shadow Jaunt! That guy from the Blood Tower Guild was able to use this move, even when he was completely wrapped in the giant spider's web. With that thought, Haruto activated Control Thief. Use Giant King Spider's web. He was delighted. Perfect. Now I can use in the skill without anyone noticing. Control C. Use Giant King Spider's web. He simultaneously activated Shadow Jaunt. A moment later, Haruto was gone. Mao, who was standing behind him, saw his sudden disappearance. He's vanished? At that moment, Haruto had moved toward the source of the energy attacks. The closer he got, the stronger the energy became, slowing his steps. Haruto finally reached it and placed his hand on it. Watch this. Kyusia's resonant frequency poison technique should be enough to destroy this thing. Suddenly, he felt a struggle, and a moment later he was thrown back. Haruto was unfortunately injured. It was then he realized its purpose. The enemy was gathering mana to explode. Refusing to give up, Haruto charged forward again. "Who do you think I am, you mindless thing? The mana you absorbed was a handout from me. Got it?" Then he used Control 5, activating Giant King Spider Silk. The summoned spider wrapped itself tightly around the energy pillar. This stopped it from attacking its surroundings. Masato was stunned watching Haruto's actions, and Nanas was equally surprised by the relentless assault from the giant golem's heart. He stopped it. Mo and Ares were also endlessly surprised. Satoru was ecstatic. "Haruto-senpai!" Just when they thought it was all over, the energy burst out from the silk. Haruto shouted, "It's still not enough!" He used his Control V ability again, activating the Giant King Spider Silk, intending to trap it once more. Haruto thought to himself, if I can just touch it one more time. His efforts paid off. Haruto managed to touch it. Got it! Control V. Using Kyusia's resonant frequency poison technique to eliminate the target, Haruto reached deep inside its energy core, causing it to gradually crack. A system notification appeared. "You have leveled up." Its heart finally shattered completely. Haruto was standing nearby. He had to shield his eyes from the immense light of the explosion. A screen appeared before Haruto. "You have destroyed the giant golem's heart. The dungeon has been cleared." He happily sat down. Haruto thought, just as I predicted. Then a continuous stream of level-up notifications appeared, leaving Haruto completely stunned. "Sweet! I leveled up." "You have received a reward item." Haruto reached out and took the heart. It was the giant golem's heart. Level 1 skill, can regenerate infinite mana. Skill 2, can absorb mana up to a certain limit. This is a permanent item. Haruto held it in his hand, feeling a bit unimpressed and skeptical. Infinite mana regeneration, huh? I don't really need this skill. I'll just copy and paste it to be safe. Control C has leveled up. The skill will now automatically copy all copyable items. Hearing this, he perked up. "Oh, automatic copy? That's amazing!" Just then, Satoru ran up to Haruto, emotionally wanting to hug him. "You're incredible, Haruto-senpai! You're the absolute best, senpai!" Haruto stopped him, saying, "Hey, no hugging. You'll break my back!" At that moment, a voice called out, "Hunter Sano!" Masato walked over to Haruto and said, "It seems you've somehow managed to obtain the giant golem's heart. Well done." He just sighed and told him, "Can you drop the somehow part?" Nanas also came over and corrected Masato's words. "If you're going to compliment someone, can you at least do it properly? You're so disgustingly petty." Hearing that, Masato was flustered and didn't know what to say, just giving a reluctant, "Uh-huh." Then Masato spoke to Haruto in a serious tone. "Hunter Sano, I'd like to have a serious talk with you after we get back." Haruto guessed his intention and started to walk away. As he walked, he said, "If you want the giant golem's heart, I'll sell it to you for a high price." Masato was surprised that he had guessed his intention. "Huh? You'll really sell it to me?" Nanas approached to advise him. "Hunter Sano, a matter this important. Perhaps you should wait until we get back to discuss it with the guild before deciding." Seeing his opportunity about to be ruined, Masato angrily said to her, "Hunter Nanas, why are you trying to butt into our wonderful friendship? Don't interfere!" Nanas, not backing down, retorted, "A shady deal like this, and how can I just turn a blind eye?" Hearing that, Masato got angry. "What? What shady deal?" Haruto ignored their bickering and turned to leave. Just then a voice called out, "Hunter Sano, wait!" Everyone had gathered together. Haruto took out the spirit blade and said, "Ares, here's your mother's memento. I'm truly sorry for the delay in returning it." Ares looked at the sword and said, "It's all right. Thank you for getting it back as you promised." Mo then asked Haruto, "By the way, that move you used just now, it looked like the one that guy from the Blood Tower Guild uses, right?" Hearing this, Haruto felt a bit nervous. Masato said, "Now that you mention it, you teleported such a long distance in the blink of an eye." Haruto stammered, trying to brush it off. That's a skill from the Giant King Spider. It leveled up, so now I can move super fast by shooting webs." Mo seemed a bit suspicious hearing that. Nanas cut off everyone's speculation, saying, "Prying into other people's skills is bad manners. Let's head back. We also need to investigate those two quickly." At that time, Takumi and Sarah also had to return for questioning. When no one was looking, Takumi said to Sarah, "Sarah, you still have to repay me for saving your life back then, don't you? Hurry up and reset the dungeon." Sarah was shocked by his proposal. She gritted her teeth in anger and cursed at him. "Are you insane? Fine, but this will be the last time, Takumi." Takumi gave Sarah a sinister look and said, "Is it because you found a suitable little mana battery? But if you suddenly forget our agreement, we'll have a big problem. The eternal subjugation bracelet will never allow you to betray your comrades. That is the curse of Adamas. As long as you're still wearing that, you can never escape me. Remember, even your parents' lives are in my hands. Hearing this, Sarah, with tears in her eyes, raised her hand. Takumi's voice continued, "So, reset it for me immediately. I risked my life to save you. Now it's time you repay your debt to me. The mana in this place is more than enough to do it." Just then, Haruto saw Sarah's sudden action and thought, "Could it be?" Sarah touched her hand to the ground. Haruto sensed something was wrong and shouted a warning. "Everyone, get out of the dungeon now! It's about to be reset!" Eris was shocked. "Reset? If that happens, who knows at what dimension we'll be thrown into?" Haruto cursed in anger. "Damn it!" He rushed towards Sarah, trying to stop her, and asked, "Why are you suddenly doing this?" Haruto quickly lunged forward and held Sarah tight, trying to prevent this tragedy from happening, but it was already too late. Afterward, layers of earth and rock infused with an immense power began to crumble ceaselessly. Blindingly powerful beams of light appeared one after another. In that violent storm, everyone was swept away, unable to resist. But then, by some miracle, at the crucial moment, they managed to create shields around their bodies. Only by doing so could they safely protect themselves as space began to crack and tear apart from the danger. Inside the protective shells of their shields, they were like aimless objects drifting through a turbulent, stormy sky. Finally, they managed to move out of the shattering space, as the inside was about to be completely reset. Satoru saw he was still trapped in the chaos and couldn't help but shout anxiously, "Haruto-senpai, nanas!" Indeed, she couldn't hide her astonishment, squinting as she asked, "Is this the space above the Tokyo sky? What just happened?" Hearing this, a flustered Ares replied, "I'm not sure either. Right now, the more important thing is—" But before she could finish, a voice from behind suddenly called out, "Nanas?" Makoto, seeing his daughter was also in this chaotic place, frowned and asked, "Why are you here?" This took her by surprise. She stammered, "Huh? Dad, Chairman Shinoda." His appearance also made Masato exclaim in shock. "Where did Chairman Shinoda come from?" Makoto just replied flatly, "I should be the one asking that. Did you all safely conquer that dungeon?" A look of surprise flashed across his face as he asked, "But is this everyone? Where are the others?" Hearing this, his expression suddenly darkened. He gritted his teeth, at a loss for what to say. Meanwhile, Nanas looked towards that space with worried eyes. She thoughtfully murmured, "Hunter Sano." At the same time, back in the dungeon, Takumi asked in a cold voice, "What is the meaning of this?" "The dungeon hasn't reset yet." Seeing Haruto slip and fall to the ground, she had to quickly make up an excuse. "He pushed me, so the reset process was interrupted." At this, the man didn't rush to blame her. Instead, he just gave a cunning smile and replied, "Well, that's fine too. At least the others have been kicked out of here. It seems the restraints have been re-established." Then, stepping towards him, he laughed gleefully and declared, "As long as I get the heart of the giant golem, everything will fall into place." Haruto couldn't contain his anger and screamed, "Shut up!" He quickly tried to activate Giant Spider King's thread, but the system reported an error, cancel plus C. Cancel plus V, item not found. Haruto suddenly felt dizzy hearing those words. His eyes widened in shock as he thought, "Huh? What do you mean, not found?" Sarah, too, had tears in her eyes, as if wanting to deny it all. "No, that can't be. Does that mean the one who got reset wasn't the dungeon, but me?" He truly couldn't believe those words. He just calmly thought, "She's gotta be kidding me. My body's memories haven't changed one bit, see?" But Haruto still wanted to prove it to himself by opening his status window. Soon after, his information appeared. Haruto Sano, level 1. HP 15 out of 15, MP 20 out of 20. Job proficiency, level 1. Skill proficiency, level 1. Basic defense, level 15. Haruto couldn't believe his eyes. He thought numbly, level 1. That means I've returned to my original state right after I awakened. Then what about my skills? It didn't stop there. The system continuously displayed Cancel plus C, level 1. Cancel plus V, level 1. One unidentified item is available. This made him sink even deeper into despair as he wondered, could things get any worse? My skills have reverted to how they were before I leveled up. Then the notification, "One unidentified item is available," appeared again, making Haruto even more confused. He thought to himself, "Huh? What's this?" But in that brief moment, a long spurt of blood suddenly sprayed out. Takumi had taken advantage of the moment he was stunned and overwhelmed with despair, and struck him down mercilessly, causing Haruto to collapse in even greater pain. He let out a gleeful, triumphant laugh. "Look at that confused expression on your face. Your level has clearly been reset. Perfect timing. Go say hello to your ancestors." In that moment of crisis, Haruto tried to reassure himself. "Calm down. That cursed skill hasn't disappeared. And there's still that unidentified item in my inventory. If this were me before I got that skill, then the best play is to feign weakness to lure in the tiger." Something unexpected suddenly occurred. The ear-splitting sound of two swords clashing rang out. It was Mo, the person Haruto thought had already left. He appeared just in time to block a sword strike for him. Seeing his arrival, Takumi grew even more frenzied, mocking him sarcastically. "Well, well, you're that low-level grunt from the International Hunters Association, aren't you? Still hanging around here? Haruto couldn't help but cry out in alarm, "Mo, why?" But Mo's face was resolute, as if he intended to protect him with all his might, and he pleaded urgently, "Hunter Sano, run! Just leave him to me! Your job is to get out of here right now!" But for someone as righteous as Haruto, he refused without a second thought. "I can't do that!" This touching display of brotherly valor just made the man sneer coldly, mocking the insolent fools before him. Feeling slighted, Takumi asked tauntingly, "Are you looking down on me? When the level difference is this obvious?" Then, he immediately put pressure on him, growling as he sized him up. "What can you do? A guy who doesn't even have the right to fight me." However, though he didn't want to admit it, this man's power was simply too great. Mo could no longer hold his ground. The sword in his hand shattered, and he took another slash. Just like that. He suddenly became powerless, sent flying backward by the man's blow, unable to defend himself. And yet, Takumi had no intention of letting him go. He immediately charged forward, saying viciously, "Serves you right! I was planning on kicking all of you out of the International Hunters Association anyway." Mo's face turned pale with panic as he thought to himself, "Too fast. I can't dodge it. If he took this blow, he would surely die." But Haruto, disregarding the danger, rushed out to block the fatal blow for him. With that, he could no longer stand. He collapsed in a pool of his own blood. Mo stared at him, stunned and speechless. "Why?" Haruto struggled to reply. "He's my prey! You don't need to help!" So get out of here now!" But Takumi swung his sword down again, his voice filled with malice as he snarled, "You talk too much! Die!" Mo witnessed it all. Horrified, he collapsed to his knees, watching as Sano Haruto was hacked to death. The man was so vicious that his body was no longer in one piece, forcing a terrified Sarah to cover her mouth and begin to sob. At last, Takumi had what he wanted. Holding that heart in his hand, he spoke with satisfaction. "Just as I thought. Once that guy's level is reset, all the items he has returned to their original places." Then his vicious gaze swept over her excitedly as he said, "Sarah, now I'm the only one you can rely on, right?" Seeing Sarah trembling in fear, he just mocked her casually. "Don't make that face. He ended up in this dead end thanks to that reset skill you gave him. I'm sure he'll be grateful to me in his next life. Thank you, sir, for putting me out of my misery since I've lost everything." Just as he finished his sentence, a familiar voice suddenly rang out, followed by a slash. "That's right. Thanks for killing me." In pain and shock, Takumi clutched his wrist, not even understanding what had just happened. The agony shooting up from his hand made him collapse, dropping his sword as he screamed and held his arm tight. From within the light, Haruto calmly stepped out, smirking coldly. "And here I was, worried you'd actually spare me." Sarah, who had been sobbing uncontrollably, was so stunned by his action that she forgot to cry. When Mo saw him, his jaw dropped in terror, as if he'd just seen a ghost. Unable to believe his eyes, a panicked Takumi turned and demanded, "What is this? I just killed you with my own hands!" Then he quickly snatched his sword back up. His mind was reeling. What kind of skill is that? Disregarding his advantage, he immediately charged at him like a madman, screaming, "You bastard! What the hell are you?" However, Haruto was one step ahead, instantly activating Control+V, Giant King Spider's thread. Even now, Takumi was still arrogant, shouting down at him, "You idiot, have you forgotten phase shift?" But he never in a million years expected it. The phase shift skill had been displaced and couldn't be used. Takumi's face went pale hearing those words. Stunned, he screamed, "What? Damn it! Sarah, reset the dungeon again!"